Hey everybody, Movie Time is back this week because Blake is finally back in town, so we had a chance to finally catch up. This is a little longer episode, so don't forget you could always check out the chapters to skip ahead and listen in on the topics that we talk about. The main topic today is Steven Spielberg, and we are catching up. Saw the Fabelmans, and we're going to be talking about the Fabelmans, our thoughts on the movie. Plus, we go into our own personal top 10 favorite Spielberg movies of all time. And we also had a little bit of time in the beginning to talk about Bones and All, a new movie that just came out recently that I saw at New York Film Festival, and Blake finally got a chance to see it now that he's back in town. So we give our thoughts on it, which is a director of one of his favorite movies of all time. So check that out. Thank you for tuning in. It's about that time. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite snack. It's movie time coming at you now. Hey, everybody! Look who's back! Look who we have back! It's amazing! Look, I know it's been a minute since you've seen us. We apologize, but sometimes, a little hiatus is good for everybody. And I know for a fact it was definitely good for our buddy Blake here. But yeah, the movie bros are back in town. And no need to adjust your screen. This is not Kevin Smith sitting in front of you right now. No, it's me, Renee. I know it looks very similar. I'm talking about like old Kevin Smith when he was like all big and pudgy. Now he's like lost so much weight. It's like really ridiculous. But anyway, we are back. I'm happy. This is Renee. This is my buddy Blake. Blake, how's it been?
You,
It's been forever.
Renee, I have missed you. I have missed doing this with you. We tried to schedule one while I
Yes.
was in Morocco after I was finally able to see Wakanda Forever,
Hmm.
which for me took 2 weeks to see because every town I was in only had the Spanish version
Yeah.
when I was available. So I finally, in Madrid, was able to see it in English with Spanish subtitles. At some point, we can do what the hell it's like seeing a movie in Spain. First off, they ask you, "Do you want your popcorn sweet or salty?" And I was like, "I'm not ready for that question." I'm pulling out Google Translate, like, "Why
Oh, they
would you
do that
ask
there
me that?"
too?
Yeah, yeah.
Because I
Where
so
have you seen that?
I have experienced that in because I saw a movie when I was in Amsterdam, and I saw like an
Okay, my
American
understanding
movie.
it's a
Yeah.
European thing. Is
Yeah.
my impression. What? I was like, "What? What?" I'll also totally different candy. Also commercials before. They do a commercial, then a trailer, then a commercial, then a trailer.
Hmm.
Then I'm normally used to here
Yeah.
commercials, sure, then all trailers. No,
Yep.
kept throwing me, and then it was the same commercial twice. Like, what? How is that happening? So, saw the movie. We're not going to get into Wakanda Forever. That's it. Well, at some point, we'll do some Marvelly stuff in the future, and we can talk
Yeah.
about it. Not for today.
No.
Not prepared.
And we could totally like
Still
yeah,
tender.
we could totally do like another episode where we talk about our international movie the cinema
Yeah, that's
experiences,
interesting. That's
right?
interesting. Yeah.
Because yeah, it is very very different, you know.
Yep. So what I did, I and then basically my internet in Morocco was just so bad we couldn't even. It was
I figured.
impossible.
Yeah.
Went to Paris for a few days. Recreated a few of my favorite movie scenes as I like to do. Went to the Jazz Cave where La La Land was partially located.
Yes.
Went to the cemetery where Oscar Wilde is born, where there's a scene from Paris Je t'aime is in there. There's It's just one of my favorite things to do, especially in Paris. So I had a lovely time. I feel rejuvenated,
Awesome.
refreshed, and ready to movie time. I've spent the last week catching up on films, cramming in at one point two in one evening, which I hadn't done in a
There you
while
go.
because I just had so much. Like
Huh.
this leaves theaters, I will not be okay. So that's where I'm at. I When we're done here, I'll probably go right back to the movie theaters and make up for lost time. But
There you go.
this is where we are.
We're here. Yeah, and again, great to have you back, and it's great to be back. Again, like I said, we apologize for not having any new episodes of Movie Time, but we're back, and we got some cool things in store for you in the near future. But we'll talk about that when the time is right. But for now, if this is your first time coming across these two knuckleheads over here reminiscing about, well, one reminiscing about his global expeditions and all that stuff like that, and the other one just here with his big puffy sweatshirt. um This is Movie Time. It's well, now it should be weekly, but it is a weekly podcast where we have two guys just basically BSing and talking about movies. So if you like what you see and you want to see us and hear us do more stuff, or have YouTube recommend some great stuff for you in the future, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Hit that notification bell so you can get notified every time a new video is uploaded. If you want an audio version of this, you can find it on the Loki Geek channel, podcast channel there. Through your podcast platform of choice, just type it out and you'll find us there where you can download this and many other episodes. We've been seeing a lot of great movement on the podcast front there. So, again, thank you so much for all you audio listeners. We greatly appreciate it. So, you already answered one of my questions. Since you've been back, I know one of your biggest priorities was trying to catch up on movies that you've missed. One of those movies is something that I already previously saw, but I've been dying to hear your thoughts
Hmm.
about it because it comes
Hmm.
from the director of one of your favorite movies of all time, if I remember correctly, Call Me by Your Name, and that is Luca Guadagnino.
Hmm.
And that
Not
is
not to be
called
confused with
Bones and All.
Luca, the animated movie from last year. Totally different Luca,
Totally
to be
different. Also,
clear.
not to be confused with Luka Doncic, NBA basketball player for the Dallas
Hmm.
Mavericks. Totally different person.
Yep,
But
different.
Luke,
I was so
yeah,
confused going into the movie. Like, wait, he
I
directed?
I could only
Different
imagine.
spelling even.
Oh yes,
So
for
if you go
sure.
to my letterbox, my number one all-time movie is Call Me by Your Name, which we can't talk about Bones, which is the same director. We can't talk about Bones now without talking about cannibalism, which means I don't want to get into the Army Hammer of it all, but that
Well,
has
good
kind of
because I am going to
tainted.
get into it real quick right
Oh,
now.
great. Thank goodness. I'm so glad you're willing to
I
go
had to
there. Why not?
because look, I find it extremely ironic. All right,
Mhm.
that
Oh, no.
Luca Guadagnino directed Call Me by Your Name, 2017, starring Army Hammer and Timothée Chalamet, who we are seeing
And Michael
again.
Stuhlbarg, who's in this movie.
Right,
Moving on. Okay.
Michael Stuhlbarg.
Lovely man.
So he loves working with the same people, right? I find it extremely ironic that his next feature
Mhm.
film
Yep.
is about people who love eating meat, human meat and flesh, when you have
Mhm.
Army Hammer, who is supposedly accused of being a cannibalist himself. So, coincidence? Inspiration, maybe? I don't know. It seems kind of ironic, don't it, you think?
So here's one option, which repeatedly they're like, it has nothing to do with Army Hammer. It has nothing to do with Army Hammer. That's kind of been a repeated
Yeah,
like line.
there's documentaries out now. You could form your own judgment or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
So when it comes to kink shaming, actually, first, I'm anti-cannibal. I want to be very clear and on the record, anti-cannibal, no matter what. Also, anti-kink shaming, unless it is actual cannibalism, in which case that's bad. Okay.
I'm glad you're saying
Hold on.
that. I'm glad you're saying that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We're all anti-cannibal here, right?
Yes. 100%.
Okay. But also, no, 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 no. So while I'd like to tread carefully into the topic of Cannibal King. No, I'm not. I would rather. So you're seeing me sweat on air. This is fun.
Yeah. This is
The
great. I love
Here's
it.
what I will say. At the very least, as someone who is a creative, there's something that can happen where things are in the water, and
Mm.
even if they're not expressly stated, and they say, "Ooh, Army Hammer has expressed that he eats human meat, so therefore, let's make a movie about it." That's so interesting. I highly doubt that that dialogue happened. I wouldn't be entirely surprised if there was a couple things that were like, "Hey, that's weird. Has anyone made a movie about that?" We have a lot of vampire movies, but they stop at some point, usually at the murder part, if not turning them in. So it is a concept. I also will say I did not view it as a cannibalism movie. I viewed it as a metaphor for other things in love, toxicity, addiction,
Mm.
etc., which we can get into that. I,
Yeah.
I don't know that we'll deep dive too much on this one, but I think it's pretty clear where I'm going with that. I do think it makes sense that even imagine there was a slightest hint of Army Hammer saying something or someone saying something in front of, and then the director's ears perk up and he go, and now he's more intrigued and he doesn't even make the connection. these things happen all the time where someone steals an idea from someone
Sure.
without realizing it, or because like there isn't, as someone who really enjoys poetry, there's a lot of poetry with like cannibalistic metaphors, and there like this is a thing that exists in the history of human beings.
Right.
And it's not impossible to imagine that a connection was made without it even being realized. So I don't know that they could say it has 0, 0 promise no matter what, cross my heart and hope no one eats it, that this has something to
Hey.
do with that whole deal. It's also, I'm not, it's possible that Army Hammer's thing is a language thing. I don't know. I didn't read up enough to even say this, but my understanding is there is not evidence of human bodies in his basement, kind of thing. It's
No.
more like he said things that creep people out. So in that way, especially if he feels comfortable speaking freely, and he's like, "Hey, let me read you these texts that I sent this person to his buddy." They're like, "Oh wow, that's so crazy. You're such an interesting, idiosyncratic guy. We're cool. That's not weird at all." Now, oh hey, this is an interesting topic for a movie. So in theory, it could have been inspired by. But I will let you say the word allegedly and then make whatever conclusion you
Sure.
want, because it's fun to do for sure.
Yeah. No, I just find it extremely ironic and kind of comical, to be honest, because before I let you get into your thoughts on the movie, my initial reaction, and I guess this is one of the great things about not prepping for a movie before you watch it, because
Mhm.
I had no idea what the movie was about.
Yeah.
I saw it during yeah.
What a
I
movie to
saw it
do that for too. God dang.
right? Exactly. I saw it during New York Film Festival, and I was in a room with at least half of the audience going into it feeling the same way as I was. We had
Oh,
no idea,
juicy.
but we've heard buzz because there's been buzz in the festival circuit that Bones and All, Timothée Chalamet, a lot of talk about Taylor Russell, who plays the female lead in this movie. And
Wait,
of
where did
course,
you see this?
New
Where did you?
York Film Festival.
Oh, go fuck yourself. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, it's okay. See, some
Wait,
things
you didn't
haven't
even know
changed
the.
yet.
We're back, baby. What? So you didn't even know the word cannibal was in any way,
No,
or that was part of the buzz.
no,
Holy
no,
cow!
no, because was kind of all I read was about the performances. That's all I read. And people were
Wow.
buzzing. It's funny how the buzz has changed too from summer to now, because I think a lot of people were buzzing about Timothy Chalamet's performance and all that, but that's kind of disappeared now, like in towards the end of the year. I think more and more people are seeing it, and the ratings for this movie, or what people are thinking about this movie, has dropped significantly too, as more and more people are seeing it. But yeah, half of the audience I was with, I think, went into it kind of as blind as I was. Again, I wanted to see it because, again, director Luca Guadagnino, Call Me by Your Name, that's been like one of the most talked about movies of that year. Even the year after, people were still talking about it. And then, of course, with the whole Harmy Hammer thing and all that, again, people were talking about it. So I'm curious as to what was his next thing going to be. So I think that's why a lot of people went to see it in the first place. My God, after that first scene, and again, I don't want to spoil too much, but you get a glimpse of this in the trailer. It's like she's going to school. She gets invited to a party at a girl's house. Girls are just hanging out. And she gets the
Painting
urge
nails,
to, painting nails. And
chatting.
she's like, hey, check out this like nice little color. And she looks very closely at it. And I thought at first she was going for like a licking or sucking of the finger because
She
maybe she
smelled
had,
the girl before that, and you see it,
yeah,
and the girl doesn't see it. It's obviously she's kind of into it.
yeah. I
She's
thought
in
it was
this
going to be
moment.
more of like I want to make out with her. I want things to happen.
Mhm.
No, basically, she just tears into the girl's finger and just basically rips the skin right off. And you have the friends in the party dragging her away from her because she was not stopping. She's just like, I'm going in. I need more of this stuff. And the audience reaction was just like, what? And I was just like, oh, it's going to be that kind of movie. Okay. Which I was
Wow.
perfectly fine with because I'm like, wow, that's the twist. I'm like, that is like the biggest twist. that
Wow.
I've ever experienced in a theater that early on, right? And I had no, and then again, that set the tone for the rest of the movie and all that, you know. So I had to bring that up because that was like a big thing, and I'll never forget it. It's like it was probably like one of my most interesting movie going experiences of the year because of that type of reaction, and because a lot of people were not expecting anything like this to happen. So, um, yeah. Well, how was your experience? And you can go into like how you thought what on your thoughts on the movie.
If there was a Q&A or anything like that, I do actually want to hear about that, even though I resent you for going to film festival. But first, my theater experience, I saw it a couple nights ago after it came out. This is Luca Guadagnino has directed my current favorite all-time movie, top five for sure. Call Me by Your Name. I would normally go to that opening night,
Hmm.
which would have had more film nerds there. This one was like maybe five people in the theater, which made it a creepier experience.
Sure.
I went into it knowing the word cannibal was associated with it. My assumption with because I intentionally didn't look into anything, avoided trailers, etc. My assumption was Timothée Chalamet is a cannibal. He's got this issue, and it's kind of like it's got a little Romeo and Juliet going on.
Hmm.
He's fighting it, and the woman loves him anyway. And which the other thing, another project Guadagnino has, which isn't a movie, but it was on uh, I'll leave that aside for now. The I thought it would be more love that's kind of forbidden, but they work it out, and he suppresses his desires that we don't really see much of. One person told me before, they're like, "Oh, you're seeing that tonight? I heard it's real gory." I was like, "What? Okay, I think there's like a proper romance with like a weird twist." Nope. Holy shit! I didn't realize that they were both cannibals, and I didn't realize that there were
Yeah.
other cannibals in the movie. I didn't realize that was the whole movie, and there was a lot of which I do actually enjoy a lot, is a beautiful director taking on something that's kind of genre flick-y, but
Yeah.
we're talking like imagine you just took a vampire level to a whole nother level or a zombie movie to a whole nother level. This was such a freaky conceit for a movie that if you didn't know that premise going into it, I cannot imagine. Because I was at least going, I was shocked when she bit the finger. But after that, I was like, oh, okay. I at least knew that there would be some
Mhm.
gore human flesh stuff going on. I cannot imagine how exciting and what an illicit thrill it would have been to be in film festival town with people. Did people walk out? I'd be shocked if they didn't.
So, from my point of view or my advantage, I did not see anyone walk out. I don't know if anyone walked out behind me or whatever the case is. I think again, the initial reaction when that scene happened was like gasping. Like, people were just like, "Oh!" I jumped. I jumped, but more like, "Oh shit," kind of thing like that, you know? And I was like, "Wow, I was not expecting this." And I did hear a lot of people conversing afterwards saying, "I wasn't expecting it to be that kind of movie," or, I felt like a lot of people were, like, in my shoes, going in it blind, or they were invited by a friend saying, "Hey, I'm gonna check out this movie at this film festival. You wanna check it out with me? It has Chalamet in it." And he's like, "Okay, I love Timothy." And then they
I
see
got to tell
something
you,
like this.
there was a couple next to me, and it seemed like they were the first reaction from the woman on the date was like a "What is this?"
Yeah.
When I heard that after, and I was like, "Thank you for seeing me next to
Yes.
these two.
Yes.
Hell yeah." I don't know what happened after that. They stayed the whole time, but I think her head was turned for like 94% of the movie. It was what a date night
Oh, yeah.
concept for
Yeah.
sure. If any friend is like, what movie should I take this person out to on a date? I'd be like, oh, there's a lovely little romance movie. It's got Chalamet in it. It's such a pleasant, sweet,
Mhm.
and then just wait for the text to start pouring in 5 minutes into the movie.
Right. Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah.
Ah,
But yeah, but
okay.
again, knowing that this is a director that you are very fond of and responsible for one of your favorite movies, how did you feel about Bones and All? Like what was your over cuz I have an interesting feeling about this movie. I don't think it was a bad movie. I don't think it was like a fantastic movie either, but it was interesting nonetheless. But I am curious as to your thoughts.
So I'm glad that the reviews are actually pretty good for it. I'm looking at like 74% on Rotten Tomatoes, on
Yeah.
Metacritic, something like that. Um, I personally think it is a great movie that people won't be able to take seriously because of that genre element to it, and it is a stomach turner to where the average Academy voter is not going to tolerate this movie and treat it like serious art. As an art house cinema lover, as I still haven't seen I Am Love by this director. It just hasn't been in my wheelhouse and hit right. But otherwise, I've seen all their other major movies, including one of the biggest turns was they went from Call Me by Your Name to Suspiria a few
Yeah.
years ago. So we knew this person was capable of and had in their creative output gore and gnarly body horror concepts. So that one threw me, but I knew going into it kind of what to expect, and it was even gnarlier than I thought.
Mhm.
Both movies I walked out of the theater at some point. This one I walked out during I came back in. I walked out during the content warning would be mother in hospital who has it is a nightmarish scenario. And I
Yeah.
personal history won't get into, but cannot sit there for that. Same with Blonde when she goes to the
Sure.
mental hospital and visits her mother. I literally walk out, guess about how long it's been, come back in. Other than that, I saw this movie, was into it. Now I'm I don't have a stomach for horror and especially like body horror. A movie that was similarly gnarly was what's the one the mechanic movie with the woman in the car? I think it was last
Oh,
year. It came
Titania.
out. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
Titan, something like that. Yeah.
Titane, something
This
like
was
that. Yeah.
similarly like gnarly, gory, gross, sexual kind of combination of all those things, but beautiful art house cinema.
Yeah.
I was fortunately able to, and I had to enjoy the movie at all without like walking out because I just don't have a stomach for stuff like what was on this screen. I basically kept reminding myself I'm in a movie theater. There's a hilarious couple next to me who's having a weird as hell date. There's a camera and a director that I'm not seeing, and I can get real absorbed into movies, which is part of why horror can mess me up, and I don't sleep afterward. Actually, in how to find time with this one, the other thing I kept in my head was not only did this not happen, this is fictional, and yeah, I'm sure there's cannibalism, and looked over my shoulder a couple times on the walk home, like, oh, is that a cannibal behind me? No, it's fine. It was just a movie. But I thought about it. As a beautiful art house movie about addiction or toxic love. And if I think of it as a road trip addiction movie, which exists, and I'm thinking of like one that stands out is Candy with Heath Ledger. And it's a movie about two people in love who have a heroin addiction and it keeps getting in the way of them being able to have a healthy romance. And it's one of the most romantic movies and one of the most tragic, heartbreaking movies. There's a lot of ones that deal with alcohol in that way.
Yeah.
In a sense, you could view this as if imagine if every time there was cannibalism, it was a metaphor for addiction. That could be it basically be just and it'd probably get a lot more Oscar nominations and a lot more people being like, "Wow, what a beautiful movie."
Sure.
Instead, they're like, "What a gross movie that had some cool camera stuff." I also am biased because Call Me by Your Name is such a Mount Rushmore movie for me. This one doesn't have the same soft lens and beautiful Italian countryside, wealthy family. Like it's the opposite in a lot of ways. We got Kentucky, Iowa, Minnesota. Um, there's a lot of like people's faces are like mud and blood on
Yeah.
them and finger tats on Chalamet, whereas he was such unsullied virginal character in Call Me by Your Name. Like in so many ways, the tone of what is on the screen is through the opposite lens of like beautiful versus dark or something like that. Um, I still saw the beautiful eye and soft touch of this director, and that was what I appreciated more. So, what helps me with a movie this gruesome is remembering this is a director and they're using a camera to capture something. And in this one, in particular, I really enjoyed it. So I think my biases are actually against movies like this. I still thought it was an incredible, beautiful movie. I gave it 5 stars, and it's the kind of movie I'll probably never
Wow.
watch again.
Wow.
5 out of 5. But I doubt I will have the stomach for it unless it's like, oh hey, boys' night, movie time. What do you want to watch? I want to watch something crazy. Want to test ourselves? See how it's like a good sleepover type movie. Other than that, probably won't ever watch it again. But damn, did I love the movie, the craft of this movie overall. Great acting, great directing, beautiful story. Got emotional a couple times. Like it was really, really well done.
Okay. No,
Yeah.
yeah, that I because again, knowing how your stomach is when it comes to horror and gruesome stuff, I was definitely curious to see how you were gonna take this movie. That's why I was like really waiting for you to watch it before we had a chance to talk about it. The one thing I will say that I totally appreciate about this movie is you got so many again, and I feel like lately we've been getting a lot of movies like this where it mixes and blends genres very well. You know, you had
Hmm.
coming of age, you have romance, you have road trip, and then you have horror and you know all that stuff like that, all mixed in together. And I do find that fascinating. The way he was able to blend all of that and in a seamless way that actually really worked. The reason why I say I don't hate this movie is because I loved how he was able to do that. I loved his camera work also. Like the camera work was very, very well done, very beautiful and all that. The performances obviously were top notch. Again, you know, Timothée Chalamet, I feel like lately now there's I keep seeing this video on YouTube that keeps I don't know why it's tracking with my watching pattern, but it's saying how did Timothy Chalamet fool Hollywood? You know, and I feel like there is like a movement of
Hmm.
saying that Timothy is not a great actor. You know, he's kind of like a one note actor and all that stuff like that. But
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Sorry. There's haters
right,
everywhere.
right, of course, of
Oh my
course. It's
God. Whoa. Okay. They just,
eh,
okay.
all you need to do is spend like a couple of hours on Twitter and you'll find that out very easily. Um, but I found his performance extremely great. Taylor Russell, and I'm not familiar with her at all, and I think this is one of her first movies or first things that she did. She was fantastic in this role. Mark Rylance is
Mm,
so
mm.
spooky and so
Woo.
creepy.
Yeah.
Wow. He gave
Yep.
me chills, like especially once like the real persona came out, you know, when he started getting obsessed with Taylor's character. Again, I won't dive into why that case was, but it was extremely creepy. And he did a really good job. That's why I think there's some chatter going on now about him possibly being nominated for supporting actor, Taylor Russell possibly being nominated for leading actress. Um, but but yeah, I appreciate a lot of that stuff about this movie. But it just is again, it wasn't one out of everything that I saw at New York Film Festival. This definitely was not top, like maybe top three for me. But
Mhm.
still, it was a memorable movie because of what was accomplished in the movie. And I think again, getting that type of reaction out of me that I was not expecting to see what I saw. I was not expecting it to be the type of movie it was. But man, I really appreciated it for what it did and everything like that. I also find it's also like another like one of those like survival type of situations, like type of movies, you know, where you know they're going cross country because you know they're living their best nomad life, but they have to find ways to survive because they still have that itch to have to eat and congest and stuff like that, right? So they have to find clever ways to do so or whatever the case is. And then they had that one run in where they're like, "Oh, we're meeting more of our people, and but not all of them are like us, or whatever the case is." So it's very very interesting. Well, I thought it was a well done movie. You know, and if I were to give it a rating, five is pretty high for a movie like that for me. I would probably give it more like a three, for me. But again, I understand it coming from your point of view because you already are a fan of the director's the way he tells his stories, the way that he directs his movies, and all that. And I think you do have that keen eye on uh, the metaphors that are really well portrayed in movies like this. You know, again, signs of addiction every time that is being done, the cannibalistic side is being done. That's not something that I would have thought of, but now hearing you talk about it, oh my god, it makes perfect sense, right? So I totally understand that.
Yeah, I think what's funny is like it's a cannibal love story, and
Yeah,
that's such a sensational plot. But in a proper genre version of this movie, it's essentially like a zombie vampire
yeah,
road trip movie,
hmm,
and that's these this a lot of the same tropes of oh we can't eat but we want to vampire
right,
problem is all over a movie like Twilight, and then the road
hmm,
trip aspect of zombies and the flesh eating part
yeah,
that would be the unsubtle version. This is actually a subtle, beautiful love story
yeah,
of that, and I wish people would take it seriously as a beautiful love story without getting caught up in the okay, the word cannibals in there, so now I can't take it
right,
seriously. Um, I think it makes sense, this movie and the genre bending thing you're talking about. I'm thinking about nowadays in the world of so much globalization. We're so far down on the information highway, and I think of the most popular artists in the world are the Beyoncés, the Drakes, the Bad
mhm,
Bunnies, who do genre bending,
yeah,
borrowing from different things and putting them, mashing them up together. It makes sense that we have so many movies that do that, and I love when a movie goes, okay, what if we took this thing and this
yeah,
thing we put them together.
hmm,
I'm fully prepared for this type of movie. And then Guadagnino, the Chalamet, and the those of the people involved who might be nominated, those are lower too. Yeah, Rylance and Taylor Russell, same for me. They stand out. I'm excited to get into Oscar 2022 review and Oscar stuff. Not today, not ready
It'll
yet,
come.
but
It's coming. Yeah.
yeah, and it's actually the other one that the Mark Rylance performance reminded me of was we talked about Todd Field after the movie Tar in a
Yes.
previous episode, one of our
Mhm.
most recent ones, and that reminds me of the Jackie Earl Haley character from Little Children, where
Oh
it's
yeah.
just such a gross and monstrous character, and
Mhm.
the acting is such a difficult job. And damn, Mark Rylance killed it without doing too corny of a spin on the like, oh, he's a creepy weirdo.
Right.
It was very believable, and that's of all the characters, that's the one that messed. The Sully character is the one that, which great name for a character who's that weird.
Right.
Sully, one of
Right.
he's the character that got in my head the most, and the one that like definitely stuck with me. So I would love it if Rylance gets nominated again, since maybe Bridge of Spies
Bridge of
was
Spies.
the
Yeah.
last one, I think, or
Mhm.
maybe another, but I'm not trying to transition into Fablemans, but I think I'm ready. There's not much more to be said about this beautiful movie.
Yeah, I will say that the ending of the movie, I did feel it was very heartbreaking the way the movie
Mm,
ended. And again, not going into spoilers, but I did feel for Taylor's character for sure.
mhm,
Like I because
mhm,
again, without spoiling anything, just picture this. The reason why I say coming of age is because she's learning to live with herself and she's learning to live with her the kind of life that she has to live on her own. And she started on her own, met someone, and unfortunately she finds herself alone again. And that is very heartbreaking in itself. And we've seen other movies kind of cover the same type of topic and do the same side of the situation. The way that this happened was very, very heartbreaking. And I
mhm.
thought it again, if it wasn't for the performances, you wouldn't have not felt it, right? And because of their performances, I thought it was very well done, and I felt it for sure. And that's why this movie is, again, it wasn't top 3 for me from the festival, but it's a movie that I won't forget because of what he was able to accomplish in a movie like this. So, but again, very curious about all of you out there. Bones and all, I believe it's gonna start streaming on demand very shortly. So, is this a movie that you will all be interested in checking out? Have you had a chance to go to the theaters and check it out yourself? Let us know in the comments. I am very curious about those of you who are horror fans out there because you could consider this to be a horror movie, but it
Mhm,
really um relies heavily on the romance, the
mhm.
coming of age and all that stuff like that. It just happens to also have cannibalism in there. So I'm very curious as to what all of you think out there about a movie like that. Let us know in the comments. We always have great conversations with all of you. So definitely want to hear your thoughts. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. But before we continue, I wanted to quickly talk about Bulletproof Coffee. Bulletproof Coffee is my favorite coffee of choice to start off my mornings with. Why? Because it's clean coffee. What does that mean? Well, one, There are no chemicals in it. Why? Because they go through this multi-step process of making sure that all of their beans are fully clean and free of any chemicals, so that when you get the beans delivered to you, it is the pure beans, the pure coffee, the goodness that you've been wanting, the taste, the flavor, and the nutritional value as well, without worrying about any added chemicals or anything else put into the mix there. It also doesn't have that weird acidic taste that some coffees give you. I don't know how about you, but for me, some coffees kind of give me that weird sensation in my stomach, makes me a little burpy, and it kind of drags me down a little bit instead of really waking me up, which is something that I need from my coffee every day. Bulletproof also offers a lot of keto-friendly snacks and supplements, anything that you need to kind of add to your everyday nutritional needs, add to your diet, pretty much transforms the way you feel every day. So for a limited time, if you use this code that you see on the screen right now, Low Key Geek, all caps, one word, you can get 15% off your order. So what is it better than that, right? Check out the link in the description of this episode. Use this code, get yourself your discount, and make your mornings a little bit more bulletproof with Bulletproof Coffee. Now, back to the episode. But moving on and going to our main topic, and someone who doesn't do a lot of genre bending in his movies. He's very clean cut and very straight to the point. Steven Spielberg with The Fabelmans. So this was a movie that you and I talked about earlier in the year, because we were wondering when the next Spielberg movie was coming out, and we found out it was The Fabelmans, and then we found out it was the semi-autobiographical movie about himself. And we're like, oh boy, here comes Spielberg, pulling his trump card or whatever the case is. It'd be like, I need a movie about myself, and the only one who can do it is me. But you could kind of understand why, because if you watch a movie like this, you get to see the care and the love that he put into kind of the retelling of his childhood growing up and all that. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of liberties being taken, but I also noticed, reading some articles and even comparing some of his old childhood photos, a lot of it was very similar to his childhood growing up. And the one thing about this movie that I will say for sure, if you are anyone who is a creative artist, musician, someone who has maybe dreams and aspirations of becoming a filmmaker, a writer, or whatever the case is, this movie will speak to you 1000%. The passion, the dream, never letting go of that dream, and the importance of support around you. Like all of us will always have support in some ways, one form or another, or a muse, right? Someone that kind of allows us to flex our creative juices and all that. And that was basically what we were able to see between now I believe the character is Sammy Fabelman and his mom, played by Michelle Williams, who is the other creative in the family. And that's why they were able to really relate in that aspect there. As far as the movie itself goes, it is probably one of the best Spielberg movies in more recent years.
Okay, yeah. I was wondering where you were going to stop that.
Yeah,
Where you were going
yeah,
to qualify it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
in at least within the last decade, Spielberg has been very hit or miss. For me personally. But this felt like it was going back to the classic Spielberg storytelling type of movie. It had a lot of great family moments, a lot of heart, a lot of passion. And the one thing that he does really well is bring out great performances out of everybody. And the performances all around the board, from Paul Dano, Judd Hirsch. Oh my goodness, Judd Hirsch.
Give him the
Again,
Oscar today.
Oh, 100%. Again, we were talking about Oscar nominees. Definitely, I could see Judd Hirsch being nominated for supporting actor in this. It was great to see David Lynch in a role playing John Ford. I thought that was brilliant to have that in there.
Great
I thought that
work.
was really great. But again, it felt very classic Spielberg. It was very heartwarming, feel good at the end of the day, especially knowing, where he ended up and what he's doing now. It's one of those momentous occasions and accomplishments to be able to get to that point in your life where you could actually do a movie about yourself growing up and all that. And I feel like we are seeing a lot of that. That is the biggest Hollywood trend right now, is certain directors getting to that age where now it's
Let's
time to talk about themselves in one way or another. We talked about this before, right? Uh, we have Brana, right, doing Belfast. We have
uh,
Spielberg now doing Fablemans. We have, I believe it's what is a movie that it
we
just
talked
came out
about Amsterdam Time, James Gray
Amsterdam,
recently.
right?
You've got Bardo, which is
Bardo,
Inarritu's kind of
Empire of
self.
Light, which is
Oh yeah,
Muschietti, right? Which I hear is
correct.
also semi-autobiographical there. So or is it Muschietti or Mendes? I'm sorry. Uh,
Mendez, yeah,
Mendes.
that's
Yeah,
Sam Mendez, but I
Sam
forgot about
Mendes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know there's more. I know there like it's been such a trend
It's
lately.
it's it's a very common thing that we're seeing the last couple of years. So it's very interesting that this is the case. But I guess we're also getting to that point where a lot of these directors are getting that old and getting up to that point where like, maybe this could be possibly the last thing I do. Let me seal my legacy by creating a movie or telling a story that's very close and personal to me. And for me it worked. It worked,
Oh,
like it Fablemans.
Paul, I was gonna say Paul Thomas Anderson also had it in Licorice Pizza in a way
Oh,
last
okay.
year.
Right, 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 right,
It wasn't necessarily his story, but it was a lot of his childhood and
right.
where he's grown up and a friend he had, yada yada.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
Uh, I
Sorry.
can't
Yeah.
wait for Tarantino to do his version, because it's going to be basically him. Like, oh, Kevin Smith. We talked about Clerks 3,
Yep.
right? Speaking of
Yep.
Kevin
Yep.
Smith, again, but Tarantino working at the video store, going nuts about all of these like Roadhouse movies and like all of these crazy genre.
It'll just be the Jack
Uh,
Black character in High Fidelity, just yelling
yeah,
at people, being like, "Why are you watching that movie again? Listen to me.
yes,
Listen to me. Come here. Come here. Why
yes,
are you leaving the
yes,
store? Oh
one
no, I
hundred
lost another
percent.
customer."
100%. Because that'll be the day that we get to see something like that. But um, when it's all said and done, the Fablemans was it worked for me. Again, it's like I said, it was Spielberg returning to his Spielberg moments that I grew familiar with. Growing up watching his type of movies, great storytelling, great performances, and again, as someone who it now considers himself really to be a creative, and I've always had some creative like drive within me. I did take a lot of this message to heart, and a lot of like the just seeing the passion, the not giving up, and all that. And I saw it in a theater that wasn't that packed, but it was definitely mixed age ranges. And I do feel like a lot of the older audience members loved this movie to death. Like people were crying, there was definitely some emotional moments and beats in there, and interesting to see and really hear that Spielberg had, what didn't obviously come from a perfect family. Like there was issues with the mom and the dad, kind of interference from a friend of theirs, where love kind of veered somewhere else and all that. So there was a lot of troubling stuff growing up, but he was still able to get through all that and kind of just put more focus on his creativity and all that, and still getting the love and support he got from both sides. Which again is kind of hard and rare to see. So really, really cool stuff. What was your thoughts and feelings on the Fablemans there, Blake?
Yeah, because I can't help myself. The other two that came to mind of recent directors doing this, and this is a couple more years ago, but Greta Gerwig, Lady Bird, and
Right, right, right.
Pedro Almodovar's Pain and Glory, where Antonio Banderas plays an older version of him, but still
Mm,
director looking in the mirror stuff.
yeah,
I can kind of see in a way they Lady Bird happens, people because I can't think of too many. I know that this has been happening forever. Even like Fellini 8.5 comes to mind. There's a lot in movie history, but
yeah,
recently it feels like a theme. So I could kind of see Lady Bird successful people, and Gerwig is so young, and it's such a recent look in the rearview mirror that directors go, "Oh, if that worked, I have some stories to tell also."
right. Well,
But then,
Yeah, we're seeing like two different like sides of it too. So you have the older directors who's been doing this stuff for a while, like again trying to tell stories from their upbringing or how they got into what they got into. And then you have newer directors who this may be their first movie. So what easier way to write a movie than write something about
Mhm.
themselves, right? So it seems to be going from those aspects.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And then the other aspect, which I'll throw in, is COVID and people having a lot of time alone with themselves and their families. Maybe they
Yeah.
lose a loved one, which has happened with some of these directors, and
Yes.
they think about, okay, what does that mean? The meaning of life, where I came from, family, and they have a little too much time at home. So apparently, some of the interviews Spielberg has given, it is directly related to COVID. It is directly. He knew he had this story, but was kind of scared to tell it wasn't ready, and he kind of hit a bucket point. He has both of his parents pass away in recent years, which kind of gives him the freedom of, okay, I can tell their story without worrying that they'll see it. And then also the being a workaholic, being in COVID, not having being able to make movies for a minute, and then going, okay, maybe it's time. So I think that that might also be part of why this is hitting right now,
Hmm.
especially. Um, Overall thoughts on the movie. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was very beautifully done. Spielberg, I think you and I come from two different camps more so, where one of the reasons you and I compliment each other in these conversations, and sometimes get into fist fights and
Just
brawls,
sometimes. Yeah, sometimes.
is you enjoy the more nerdcore blockbuster, big spectacle picture that Spielberg is really good at.
Yeah.
And I enjoy more of the indie art house, weird. This is a 2 hour movie with no dialogue and only three cuts. And it's just such an experimental, weird piece of crap that no one enjoys except me.
Yeah.
That stuff that Spielberg's pretty damn good at both.
Hmm.
The, I, after, in preparing for this movie, I watched the Spielberg documentary on HBO from 2017, listened to some stuff
Yeah.
about it, and going into it, I already had heard the story about Spielberg's parents and the he had a grudge against his dad and didn't talk to him for 15 years.
Yeah.
Then later in life, into adulthood, realized that the dad did not abandon the family out of self-interest, but as in the interest of his family.
Right.
That story, when you hear it told as a story and you see it here, which they didn't actually get fully into that
No.
story, but it was definitely all throughout the movie. It was a big punch in the movie. But the version of the story that I had understood, which is shown here, but then they kind of like they move on without making it pack too much of a wallop. That's such a bonkers way to live, is to hate your dad, cut him off, not talk to him, blame your dad for the dissolution of your family, then realize it's actually your mom, and your dad was trying to do right by you and the mom and the
Yeah.
friend by moving on and letting you have staying with the mother without causing a rift there. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that there's some directors where, okay, you don't really have much of a story to tell. You just think your story is important. This is not one of those, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Anyone who thinks this is some vanity, self-obsessed project and get over yourself, why you make first off, that's dumb because it's Steven Spielberg anyway. That'd be like if Steve Jobs, or I'm trying to think of like great titans of the 20th century, important people in pop culture, etc. Like there are people who
Elon
can't make the
Musk.
movie about themselves. So what'd you say?
I said Elon Musk.
Elon Musk probably would make a terrible movie. Abraham Lincoln would probably make a terrible movie.
Sure.
Spielberg can make a movie about Lincoln. Why can't Spielberg make a movie about Spielberg? Get over that dumb complaint.
Yeah.
And regardless of that, past that, this he has an incredible story from his childhood. I thought it was a little saccharine at times, with which is my biggest issue with Spielberg in general, is
Sure.
his lens is a little too soft focus. He's got a little too much popcorn eating tendencies and crowd pleasing tendencies. I got to give the man credit. He is a genius when it comes to that kind of movie. We'll get into our top 10 Spielberg list, and the amount of movies man has that are just
Hmm.
some of the most important pieces of American pop culture cinema of all time and some great art house ones thrown in there, and Oscar worthy movies, etc.
Yeah.
That said, he leans a little too into um, easy fanfare films. And while I'm not trying to take anything away from him, he's really good at it, and he is a master craftsman when it comes to that. This one actually I felt like was one of his grittier, more raw movies. I actually
Mhm.
enjoyed that. I could almost see him getting even softer and more like, yeah, but everyone loved everyone, and everyone was happy and got no. The he said before that he doesn't do therapy, that movies are the way he works things out, which you can see in his oeuvre, where
Oh,
like in the amount of times divorce comes up, etc. The
yeah.
A therapist would just watch his movies and go like, hey, you need to talk about this thing. He's like, no, it might get in the way of the movie. So
Mhm.
literally said that he doesn't do that and he would rather put it into the movies.
Yeah.
I'm really glad in this scenario that he doesn't go to therapy and had to work this thing out, because it was a really well done story. The one where at the end of the movie it's okay, everything worked out because this man makes beautiful movies. I didn't necessarily buy into that. I'm imagining like I'm a creative and a film obsessive. So I buy in. I go, yeah, you're gonna become Steven Spielberg someday. Woohoo, great movie. This was all a worthwhile story to tell. And that's the satisfying conclusion. If you're an average cinema person, I don't know that, and who's not a creative, looking for passion, inspiration kind of thing. I don't know how well this movie works, why you would necessarily get invested in Sam Fabelman if you're not necessarily invested in Steven Spielberg and the power of cinema.
Mhm.
If you're the kind of person when you watch the Oscars and they talk about the magic of the movies and how it brings us together and it makes the world a better place, if that makes you cringe, then you probably this movie won't work too well on you. If you watch Nicole Kidman's
I was gonna say, like, if
before
you
the
go to
movies,
AMC, yeah, if you go to AMC theater, you're seeing that every time you see a movie.
if you're not the kind of person who says heartbreak feels good in a place like this and means it, this movie might be a little cringe for you. I It worked on me for sure, and I think I ended up giving it 4 or 4.5 just because of that anti-Spielberg bias, which not even anti-Spielberg, but just like that. I wish his movies were just less pleasing. I want him to
Yeah.
like grate on me more, or like push my buttons more, like be more experimental, something like that. But damn, if we'll get into his movies and talk about where this one ranks, but um, it was a very successful project in that way.
No, definitely, and I love that the way you phrased it too, how this movie felt more gritty. Like, he was taking definitely taking more chances in some of the storytelling beats in this movie, and that's why it made me feel like the this is Spielberg before. Like, I'm curious what Spielberg would do if he directed this type of movie in his 20s, when he
Mm,
was first
mm,
coming out in the scene, because I saw Spielberg as being very like a huge risk taker back then. You look at some of his early movies, those weren't necessarily the crowd pleasing type of movies, happy endings all the time, happy go lucky, softer lens, and all that. He took a lot of swings and risk, in his earlier on in his career. It just so happened that he created the blockbuster genre with some
mm,
of these movies, and he
bro.
kind of he kind of dug this hole for himself, where then I think as he got older, he felt like these are the types of movies that he has to make all the time, because
Mhm.
look, it makes money, it brings crowds and audiences out to watch his films and all that. But like you said, every now and then he will sprinkle something in there that is a little bit more serious. It's a little bit more art housey or a little bit more, risque. And I think if you go through his filmography, you do see those things sprinkled in. You talk about your Munichs and your Schindler's List and all that. Like, those are not necessary crowd pleasing movies, but very impactful type of movies that, I feel like we got more of from an older Spielberg than we get in more recent years, or like I said, in this decade that we're in and all that. But
I
yeah,
just have
go
to
for it.
push back. Remember what you're going to say, but I have to push back. He's told this exact story before, But like for example, in Jurassic Park, the kids are going through divorce and then they're getting bullied, but in that case, it's by T Rexes instead of Aryan jocks in the California high school in a new atmosphere. In a movie E.T., Close Encounters and E.T. in different ways, there's an outside force entering into their lives, and they're going through divorce, and the children have to find themselves and coming of age and making connections along the way, and the magic of cinema and storytelling.
Sure.
He's told this movie plenty of times. It's the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
movie.
Yeah,
It's
I
the
mean,
same movie.
he's taking aspects that he grew up seeing and being familiar with and sprinkling them in his stories. We can go into the whole conversation about Woody Allen and how in every one of his movies you have an older gentleman falling in love with a younger woman, and look at his real life, romances and all that stuff like that. Um, I think a lot of
Rather talk
directors.
about Army Hammer if you don't mind. We could go
Oh,
back to
sure,
that
we could do,
topic. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a
Army
lot.
Hammer for sure.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the next Army Hammer film where he is actually a vegetarian. Um,
Please
but
continue while I avert my eyes. No, not engaging. Yeah,
no, it's
I'm not
fine.
engaging.
Um, but I feel like a lot of like creative people, they do that, right? They take aspects from their lives and they put it out as what they're in their stories or in their movies and all that. But it like you said, it was nice for him to actually do this on a level where it's not being hidden by giant dinosaurs or being overlooked because you have aliens coming in and all that. Like, this is huge part of the story, a huge part of how it affected the family dynamic and how it affected the main character, the individual growing up and moving on in life and everything, learning life lessons through, experiencing all that while you have all this stuff around you, you know. So I'm curious how this would rank in your list of Spielberg movies and all that. But I'm sure for a lot of people, this is, and I've heard people say this already, that this movie has moved up on their list of Spielberg movies, like all-time Spielberg movies, because of how strong it is. And again, the powerful directing, storytelling, the older Spielberg coming out that we haven't seen, or maybe we want to see more of, and we just haven't had a chance to see that in more recent years. Um, but yeah, no, I was very entertained by this movie. Again, it touched me in a lot of different ways. And I think also because I did grow up in a family of divorce and all that stuff like that, like I could very easily relate to a lot of the things that were portrayed in this movie, or just at least the feelings for that aspect. I would have loved to have a grandfather like Judd Hirsch
Oh,
screaming at me, telling me not to give up or not to be shy or scared to pursue something and all that. Like, I would have loved to have that type of figure in my life growing up.
I was gonna say me too. No, I had a grandfather exactly like Judd Hirsch.
Oh,
I
that's
mean, very
awesome.
very similar,
Yeah.
similar clothes, added everything. So yeah, that's kind of explains why I am the way I am.
There you are. Yeah.
That man gave me a similar talk when I was young. I will not divulge, but yeah,
Oh,
loved that character. I don't know that I need to talk about the cinema experience. I had like a night at the movies. I saw this one before I saw Bones and All, which also helped me with like, oh, Bones and All is just a movie. I know what movies are. I've just watched a man making movies in a movie. Okay.
right, right, right.
Um, Glad I saw this one first for sure. But it was just like a night at the movies. I think I laughed more than some other people, and
Sure.
maybe because I saw it later, just like a lot of things I'm going to see now that I'm back
Yeah.
from my travels. But um, I didn't seem like there was a ton of people who were in on the Spielberg of it all. Where there's a few things where you go, "Oh, that's a reference," and I
Hmm.
like. But it did seem to definitely be a similar, like a crowd who was there to see a movie like The Fabelmans, and
Right.
not much to report there. But I don't know if you want to talk about your theater experience or
Yeah.
awardsy conversation. There's, there, I don't know. I don't think I want to do too much more spoiling and getting into like the minutia of the story,
No.
other than what we already have. But
Yeah.
it's a beautiful coming of age story for sure.
It really is. It really is. It is very well done. And again, kind of hard to spoil a movie based off someone's life because it's already out there. But but again, liberties are taken here and there, obviously with the names of the family and all that. But my theater experience. So I saw this. Um, I didn't see this as soon as I wanted to when it was first out in theaters. Again, we living in New York, we have the luxury of movies like this getting limited release before it goes nationwide and all that. So I didn't get to see it immediately after that, but I did see it in a theater that is very well known for more of cinephiles attending because it's right close to Lincoln Center. It's the AMC Lincoln Square. So
Which
it,
was
it
named
was
after the movie Lincoln by Steven Spielberg, right?
100%. Yeah, 100. The whole
Okay.
area is named after Lincoln
They're just
based off of
obsessed with Steven Spielberg movies over
Spielberg
there.
Lincoln.
I don't know why the movie Lincoln is so popular with them.
I know, it's so true. But it was a later showing, so again, it was mixed in with it was a good mix of older audience members and more people like you and I. Like again,
Okay.
you could tell just by hearing the conversations as they're walking in. I already heard people talking about their favorite Spielberg movies coming into the theater and all that stuff like that. It was, and again, given that it's an AMC theater, of course, we did see the Nicole Kidman opening, and I have to say,
Mm,
it was my
mm.
first experience while people actually stood up and applauded while the thing was playing. I've heard of this happening
Really?
in other theaters. I've heard of
Oh
people,
my
especially in
gosh, I have to start.
California.
Oh,
Yeah, I've
yes.
heard this actually happening. This was my first experience where I actually saw it in my own theater.
Wow.
People stood up
Wow.
and applauded for this to happen as it
Oh
was
my
playing out. God knows what will happen when she films her new version for next year because it's coming. I already heard about it, and it's gonna be phenomenal. It's like a sequel, right? But I
man,
I, I
I
have a
can't.
debate about the whole Nicole Kidman thing. Do you really honestly think she watched Jurassic World?
What do you think that they watched instead of that
I
on the
I
screen?
mean, come
This is an
on.
improv game we can play, not
Yeah.
work
So
words.
so so let's think about the movies that were flashed as she's watching this, as she's
Mhm,
sitting in her theater, right? You have
mhm.
Jurassic World, Wonder
Spielberg,
Woman, right?
Wonder
You
Woman, La
have
La Land.
La La Land. I do believe she watched La La Land for sure. What else did they show? The screen. Creed? I don't think she watched Creed one bit.
Yeah, right. She's so tough. That's her breakfast. Every morning she makes a big green smoothie and watches Creed. You know that.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna go ahead and just say probably Eyes Wide Shut.
Oh, that's a
Is
good
the
one.
only
Yeah.
movie. Yeah, they
Yeah.
did like a Clockwork Orange scenario where they just like kept her eyes
Yeah.
open and then she just kept watching the movie repeatedly.
I think
Um,
I honestly feel like they did that, but they showed all of her own movies. So definitely Eyes Wide Shut,
mm.
Days of Thunder.
Oh,
I,
just
I
Australia with her and Hugh
or
Jackman
Australia.
too.
Yeah. And I
Oh,
want to say Bewitched. They probably showed Bewitched 100%, and the first movie where she
the what was the last year's Oscar nominee movie that she was in with
Oh,
Javier Bardem? The Ricardo's movie. She
no,
plays
yeah,
Lucille Ball. Am I
yeah,
wrong?
what's that? Being the Ricardos, right? The Amazon movie?
That is absolutely the movie that they played. We already know that to be true.
Oh,
And
yeah.
she asked for it sincerely, and they put it on ironically, and they were like, "Okay, maybe she'll never make a movie like that again if we just make her watch it repeatedly." Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think that's when she meant heart it can feel good in a place like this. Yeah, I
Oh
think that's
God, great diss,
definitely
great
yeah.
diss. Okay. Well,
But
I
anyway,
will have you know, in the last 24 hours, I'm putting together my Christmas list, and we've got the
yes.
AMC merch. We're not sponsored by AMC merch. We got the
No, we're
website and
not. Yeah.
the hoodie. Heartbreak feels good in a place like this. On a sweater, a T-shirt.
Nice.
There's a
Nice.
there's a T-shirt called The Pledge that has the entire speech on the back of the shirt, which I would obviously turn around and wear on the front of the shirt. I This is number one on my Christmas list
Now
this
here's
year.
here's
So.
my question to you on this. Are these items being sold on AMC or is this another separate
AMC
independent?
Theaters, moviemerchandise.com, and it was
Brilliant.
even advertised to me by AMC at some
Brilliant.
point. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Unless this is just a great knockoff job, but no. There's a
Brilliant.
baby onesie that says "Welcome to AMC Theaters to laugh, to cry, to care," because
Oh,
babies love to cry is in bold. That's
that's
so cute.
awesome.
Yeah, and then
W-
there's one
It
where it says "We come to this place for magic," but this place for is in tiny font, so it just kind of looks like if you're walking closer to something, you would just see "We come to magic." but then you'd see, oh, this is a reference to AMC. We come to
Ah,
this place for magic. I think honestly, reading a couple of these, there's like a wink happening by the person who's designing them.
oh, I'm sure.
Some really interesting design choices here. I'm gonna buy one of everything. I can't
Look,
even wait for the holidays.
look, it's the holiday
Purchase, purchase,
season. If
purchase,
anyone
purchase.
out
Mhm,
there watching would love to send us a gift, then by
mhm,
all means, I will leave a link in the description
mhm,
for that website. Feel free to purchase a hoodie, a T-shirt,
mhm,
whatever the case is. We would definitely greatly appreciate it.
mhm,
But no, again, to close out the whole Fablemans discussion, we enjoyed it, right? And I mean,
oh yeah,
it was
oh
a
yeah.
very, again, it was nice to see a really well done Spielberg movie. Um, that we haven't had a chance to see a lot of in recent years, and it was a return to form, I think, for him. Hey everybody, are you a fan of collectibles, action figures, Funko Pops, and all that stuff like that? Do me a favor and visit entertainmentearth.com and you won't be sorry. Entertainment Earth is the premier place online for the latest and greatest toys, the most exciting action figures, and the coolest gifts and collectibles pop culture has to offer. From television, movies, sports, celebrities, comics, internet memes, and every fandom in between, they drop new products daily and curate their selection so that you don't miss out. Whether you're looking for something stellar from a galaxy far, far away with Star Wars, or from the streets of Gotham City with DC Comics, they've got surprises for everyone. Get access to exclusive releases and limited run pre orders. You can even reserve hard to find items before they arrive. From Funko to Hasbro, all your favorite vendors are represented in their robust catalog of cool collectibles. Take advantage of their unparalleled industry expertise and make your collection as worthy as Marvel's Thor. They are pleased to offer risk-free shopping with their industry-leading mint condition guarantee and hassle-free 90-day returns. Find that grail you're seeking for yourself or someone you love. And because I know how special they are and how they're going to be great for a lot of you out there, I worked a special deal with them that if you check out the link featured in the description of this episode, you will get 10% off plus free shipping over orders of $40 or more. I mean, that is fantastic, don't you think? Now, the 10% discount is only good for in stock merchandise, so it doesn't work for any pre orders. But if you take a look at their site, there's going to be a lot of stuff they have in stock that you'll probably want to get. So, again, visit that special link in the description of this episode to take advantage of this awesome 10% offer plus free shipping and buy yourself or a loved one something really cool. Entertainment Earth, so many toys, so much fun. Um, which now leads into the segment that I was very much looking forward to, and I'm sure a lot of you are very curious to, find out and hear what we consider to be our top 10 Spielberg movies. Again, huge
Are you? If you're
library.
asking me, it's Warhorse, it's BFG
Uh huh.
as number one and number two.
Yep.
Warhorse obviously number one.
Yes.
No, seriously, when you said this movie moved up people's rankings, I was like, okay, so BFG went from number 33 to number 34 for everyone's list.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
they just
You know,
knocked everything down once because now there's 34 movies.
yeah, everyone decided to scratch off Bridge of Spies, because I know that was way up there
Do
for a
not
lot of
joke about
people.
that. We just talked about Mark Rylance for like 20 minutes. No, how dare you? Take it back.
He was the
BFG we
only
can
one.
make fun of, not Bridget.
Look, Bridge of Spies, he was the only person good in that movie. There was nothing else good.
Tom Hanks does a great accent in Spielberg movies, as evidenced by The Terminal.
Okay. I agree with the Terminal.
Have you ever been to Krakosia? That's how they talk in Krakosia, of
You
course.
just
It's
came from
obviously a
there.
real
Of course you
place.
would say that.
Wow. Okay.
Mr. Globetrotter over
There,
here. But
there was a moment where I was getting stuck in an airport unless something happened, and thank goodness I got out. And I definitely thought of the movie The Terminal.
oh man,
So,
every time there is a delay in any airport in any flying situation, I think of that movie immediately
oh
because it
no, I
could
can't
happen
find
to
my passport.
anybody.
I can. Oh
Yeah,
no.
exactly.
Check the news immediately and see if just make sure there's no war going, new war.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, um we had a fun time putting our own list together here. And again,
Miserable.
you look at you look at
Stressful.
Spielberg's filmography, it's huge, right? So of course we had to specify some criteria. So the movies on our list are only the movies that he directed. He's been a part of a lot of movies where he wrote the script, he produced it, so that's why his filmography is massive. So when you narrow it down to the movies that he actually directed, it's a little bit more digestible. But still, there's tons of movies on that list, and we're very excited to talk about it. Please, after we go through our list, or as we're going through our list, we would love to know what your top 10s are for Spielberg. If you want to give us your top 3, your top 5, let us know in the comments. We had a lot of fun putting this together, despite what Blake said. Also, let us know what you think about the Fabelmans and if the Fabelmans actually cracked into your top Spielberg list, because that is what I've been hearing a lot of ever since the Fabelmans came out. So the way
I'd
we're
need
gonna
to
do this,
know for sure.
yeah,
Also, sorry, we're talking about
yeah.
they keep coming up. Paolo Sorrentino also had a movie about his youth that was nominated, I think, last year. Okay,
Oh, okay.
I'm all over the place right now. You
We
just
should
listed
we
so
should
many movies.
we should come out with an episode where we
Hmm.
just talk about people who directed movies about themselves. Yeah.
Yes, The Hand of God. Check out my letterbox. I'm sure that that list will be coming shortly.
For
I
sure.
can't stop thinking about him. Okay, Spielberg Town.
Spielberg time. So, the way we're gonna do this, I guess we'll start from the bottom, work our way up, and we'll go back and forth, 10, 10, 9, 9, all that stuff like that. If you mention or I mention a movie that is maybe higher on our list or whatever, we could save the conversation for then, or we could discuss it, whatever the case is. We'll just wing it. We'll play it by ear. How about that?
Okay, sounds
All
good.
right, cool.
I'm terrified.
No, don't you
This
nothing to be
was
worried about.
a nightmarish process. I'm not okay. I spent a lot of time sweating. Bridge of Spies versus The Post versus The Terminal versus Catch Me If You Can. Oh my gosh, they're so similar. I can't put them all in there. I had 3 panic attacks making this list. I hope it's worth it.
It will be. It will be for sure. So, given how terror induced you were putting this list together, why don't you go first? So, what's your number 10?
I would love to get this over with. Thank you, Renee. I actually need to start with my number 11, which is E.T. And the fact that it's not making my top 10 is just, I need to start with a fire opinion. I stand by this. The movie's overrated. Come at me in the comments, I beg you. My number 10 is Minority Report.
Okay.
I don't know that I don't want to say a ton about every single movie,
We don't have to, no.
other than, yeah, it was very important, came out at the right time in my life. I was
Mhm.
15, and well made movie, and also ET kind of sucks. So please come at me. I don't stand by that opinion whatsoever. I'm terrified right now. What
That's
was your
fine.
number 10?
I will say this: E.T. is not in my top 10 at all.
Oh no! Oh
Yeah.
no! The comments
Yeah.
section is now smoking. Now it's on fire.
And I have a
Oh
reason.
no!
I have a
Oh no! No!
reason.
Get out of there, please. There's a
So,
riot happening. The amount of
that's
dislikes
it.
just got
All of
multiplied
a
by
sudden,
30.
the subscriber count is dwindling and
Yep.
dwindling. It's like shrinking,
I can
and
hear it. I can hear the
yeah,
people
it's like
running away.
cha-ching, 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 and then before
Wow,
I know it,
neither of us.
yeah,
I thought it would be in yours for sure, buddy. I might not
no,
have left it off. Oh
yeah,
no.
no, yeah,
Oh
and I
no.
I have a story about it too. So uh, one of the pastimes growing up, obviously, is going to the movies. My mom loved taking me to the movies and all that stuff like that. The only problem going to the movies with my mom is that she was not afraid to go into a movie late. So she would buy a ticket. We would be like an hour late. Her thing would be like, we'll stay in the movie, watch it till the end, and stay, and then we'll rewatch it when the next showing starts, right? So I'm like, okay. Again, I'm very familiar with this process with her and all that. So ET's out.
Wow.
So she decides to take me to ET. We're late. We walk into the theater. The first thing I see on this giant screen is a dead, decrepit ET lying on the bed in a body bag. And I
That's when
freaked.
you arrived at the theater?
Yes, that's when we walked into the theater. and
Oh,
I
oh my god.
screamed and
Oh my
freaked the
god.
fuck out. Yeah. I my mom could not shut me up. I was panicking. I was just yeah. So she had to take me out, get a refund, get a ticket for another movie, and it took me 20 years to watch E.T. because of that. Hand to God.
uh, as
Yeah.
an as an objective third party, I'm imagining being in the movie theater, be like, "Who are these assholes walking
Yeah,
in?"
oh, I'm
Okay, good. The
sure.
kids.
I'm so
Oh no!
sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
poor boy. He missed the
Yeah.
Reese's Pieces scene,
Yeah.
the stuffed animals in the bedroom scene, the everything.
Oh,
No
yeah.
context.
The way Drew Barrymore was screaming, that's probably me. That was probably
Oh
how
my
I sounded to
gosh.
everybody. Yeah. That's probably how I
Gosh,
sounded to
that is
everybody there.
so hilarious. So,
Yeah.
link your mom's YouTube in the description, and then people can go to her for why it's not in the top 10 because it's not our fault. I
Yeah.
don't have an excuse nearly that good. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
didn't. I saw it too late. It didn't hit me in the kid years that it should have. It's
Yeah.
all right. It's good. It's not aging as well as the others. I will stand by
It
that.
does not.
The
It does
effects of some
not.
of the other
Yeah.
movies where Jaws and Close Encounters are more subtle,
Yeah.
he does not have that benefit. It's a little more overt movement, and it doesn't look as good by our
No,
standards
it,
now.
it it does not age well. It came out in '82, so I was like 4 years old. So I didn't really watch the whole movie from beginning to end until I was in my early 20s. And watching it at that late in the game, I thought it was very cute. I will say that it's very cute, but
Very
because it doesn't
delightful.
age well, yeah, I didn't consider it to be like uh a mind blowing experience. Like I'm sure a lot of people who watched it at that time, you know, thought about it. So
Even more offensive is Goonies wouldn't be on my top 15, top 20 because I same problem. I saw it too late. I know he's a
sure,
producer. It's not that wouldn't even be in our list, but it's one of the most blasphemous movie opinions I have because so many people saw it at the right age and are obsessed with it and they
yeah.
think it's one of the greatest movies. I saw in my 20s and go like, oh, this is boring. This
No,
is
I've
fine.
yeah, I've
Yeah.
met a lot of people. I have friends who are, kind of like younger generation, and they don't like Goonies either. And I understand it because that movie again came out at a specific time, and if you were the right age at that time, that movie
Mhm.
will stick with you forever. Goonies is probably in my top 20 movies of all time, I would say for me. Because again, it hit me at the right age. I was at
Wow.
the right time,
All
and
movies all time.
of all
Wow. It's
time.
not even my
Yeah.
20 Spielbergs if it was on this list, if that was
Right.
allowed. That
Right.
ass. And E.T. also did give us Drew Barrymore, who's one of the most
Sure.
underwhelming actresses and mediocre, maybe sub mediocre actresses that at points had promise, but looking at the career,
Wow.
wait, I'm sorry. Drew Barrymore was great in 51st Dates
Wow.
and The Wedding Singer, two Adam Sandler movies, and Charlie's Angels. But
Ooh.
now is a really good talk show host, from what I hear. I haven't seen it. Fever Pitch with Jimmy Fallon, important classic American cinema.
Okay,
So
so my number 10.
definitely started hot.
Yeah, so my
Okay.
number 10, and my number 10 is Schindler's List. And I'll say why it's number 10. It had to be in my top 10 list of best Spielberg movies. But because I cannot watch that movie again, rewatchability for me is very low for this movie. But I have to acknowledge what a fantastic movie this was. So it needed to be in my top 10 list of Spielberg movies of all time. So that's why it's number 10. It's in my top 10, but it's not a movie that I could ever watch again after the one time I watched it. So that's why.
I'll say more on that one later. I'll save it for when it
Okay.
gets to my spot on the list because yeah, I'm not a terrible person who put it at number 10. My number 9, hold on the sheet. No, seriously, I had a really hard time ranking that one for
Yeah.
similar reasons. So number 9, I'm going AI, artificial intelligence.
Oh.
Some people dock this one because it did not start off as a Spielberg project. Spielberg kind
Mhm.
of took it over for Kubrick and tried to direct it, but as a Kubrick maybe being my number one director, definitely Mount Rushmore, all time directors. That to me doesn't hold anything against it. And I think it was executed well. Again, I was 14 when that one came out. That helps a lot, is
Yeah.
something we talk about on these episodes repeatedly, the context by which you see a movie.
Yep.
Your Star is Born experience was ruined because the Gaga obsessive was
Oh
yelling in
my
the
god,
background and
yes.
clapping along the entire time. That'll hurt a movie like that. When you're 14 and seeing Haley Joel Osment and Jude Law and I won't get into it. Beautiful movie, well done, well executed, hit me at the right time. So that's my number 9.
Nice, nice, very nice. Um, I remember when AI came out, I was the only one in my circle of friends who actually liked that movie. Everyone hated it. Everyone thought it was boring.
It
Um,
is everywhere.
it was okay. It was an okay movie. My number 9 movie, which might surprise you, West Side Story. Um, and the reason why I have West Side Story on my list is because
My heart,
growing
so
up,
happy.
again, my mom was a huge musical person. I grew up watching Sound of Music, all that stuff. You name it, I've watched it. And West Side Story was obviously one of them. The way he told his version of West Side Story and actually added to the story, because
Mhm,
it's West Side Story, not West Side Musical,
mhm, mm.
was brilliant. And it made me appreciate it 10 times more than I ever did. Because I then quickly, immediately watched the original West Side Story. I'm like, where is all of this? Where's all this deeper insight on this
Wow.
group and this person and that person? It made me
And
care
you as a New
more.
Yorker are
Yeah,
fully primed to appreciate those things even more, that richer context. So I hear you. You
100%.
hate the original West Side Story. Everyone put that in comments how you feel about that. Renee,
We
my
both hate E.T. We both.
yep, yep, and we both hate the Goonies. We agree on that. Okay, my number
No,
8
no, no.
is the movie West Side Story, number 8 for me.
Oh,
So I'll just
nice.
piggyback off yours, um, and with my thoughts. That my hot opinion, which gosh, I love how controversial this is within the first few. Some people put like Minority Report and AI on the bottom of their list. This is Spielberg's career is so varied. It's so difficult to do a list like this. I'm
True,
enjoying this.
true.
I am saying West Side Story is better than the original. The original is more of a classic. It is more important in the history of cinema. In some ways, it is definitely better. Um, Spielberg did his damn thing on the movie and took it and furthered it and I think enriched it. And
Yeah.
obviously the other advantage, which we talked about, at least I think we may have talked about West Side Story in real time, or we talked about it in our Oscars stuff. Yeah, I think we were doing Oscars at
I
that
think we're
point.
doing the Oscars. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw this movie 3 times in theaters. I literally cried every single time that I saw it. It was very effective. And the other advantage, which we talked about then, when we're looking at it for sound and editing categories, is this movie has an advantage over the original that Spielberg
Sure.
has a lot of resources that did not exist when the original came out. So if you want to make it a case that the original is more important and more difficult and a greater achievement for its time, yeah, for sure, I won't take that. But if you just want to do side by side all factors out the window, I actually appreciate the newer one much more. Like you said, he enriched the story
Yeah.
to me by a lot, and the quality of directing, everything. So that's my number 8. I stand by that one, even though a
Nice.
lot of people could be pissed off. Okay,
I mean,
I
I
stand by
don't
it.
know why,
I
but I get it.
no
Like you
regrets.
said, putting a list together like this is going to be so different among so many different people, right? Because
Mhm,
certain movies hit them very differently. It also depends on the time they watch the movies or whatever the case is.
mhm.
So I get it. But
Everyone
it's
puts
great.
1941 at their number 1 movie, but other than that, it's fully ripe for polarization and controversy.
Right.
Okay.
All right. My number 8 is Minority Report. So again, not so far off from where you have it on your list. Um, Great science fiction movie. Again, I was right age when that came out. Um, I think from that movie, we always get the whole thing about enhance, 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 right? And just seeing Tom Cruise standing there doing all of this like hand gestures, moving things around and all that. I just thought it was a very well done science fiction movie. Probably one of Tom Cruise's better movies for sure. But again, and I believe it was this and War of the Worlds. Those were the only two movies that he worked with Spielberg on, right? Um,
Oh, sorry, Tom
for Tom
Cruise.
Cruise. Yeah,
I think those are the two. Yeah.
the two, right? And this was if you wanted to see a great pairing of Cruise and Spielberg, this is the one to choose over War of the Worlds. Because having seen, I just rewatched War of the Worlds a couple months ago, and does not hold up one bit. But yeah, Minority Report number 8. So, what is your number 7?
Number 7, I just did a little switcheroo because I just couldn't stand by the other
Oh,
one.
you!
I put Saving Private Ryan in number 7.
Oh, okay.
I was not able to see that one when it came out, which I think
Hmm.
may have been in better for me. I was 11 when it came out. I think I saw it when I was about 18, 19, something like that.
Yeah.
Powerful, incredible war movie. Early, Matt Damon.
Yeah.
Is my memory off on that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Some other great
A
young
lot of early
casting.
people. Yeah.
Yep, a lot of that. So seeing it later is actually even better. If you'd only seen it once in '98, you don't necessarily get that retrospective there. And then also when I was older, I was more impressed by the history of World War II
Mhm.
and and being at post drafting age, that movie means a little bit more in ways. So anyway, I knew the reputation of the movie at the time when it came out. Um, and how culturally important it was and ubiquitous it was, how many people saw it. But I didn't see it till later, and it's definitely to me. I feel very comfortable with it being at number 7 on my list.
Nice. Nice. Um, that movie is also on my list, but it's a little bit higher. So
Wow. Okay.
I'll just leave it at that. Um, but let's see. We are at 7. All right. My number 7 is Catch Me If You Can. Um, Very well done movie between Leonardo DiCaprio. Talking about Tom Hanks. Uh, this is definitely one of Tom Hanks has worked with Spielberg quite a bit, and this is
Mhm.
definitely one of his best collaborations with Hanks.
Peak
Good
Hanks.
Peak Hanks. Oh my God, yeah.
Peak
I
Hanks for
mean,
later Hanks, especially. That's
exactly.
10
No,
years or so after Forrest Gump. Yeah, he didn't have a
yeah,
lot of hits in
no,
the 21st century, but this is one of them.
yeah. It's interesting, and maybe this is something that we could get into one day where we talk about the evolution of Hanks, because there's 80s Hanks, 90s Hanks, and current Hanks are so different. It's like he's gone through a lot of like different transitions and all that. But yeah, like this was during the time when this was again a second peak of his career, because he was very big in the 80s, and then he had like a very dull lull, big lull, and then Forrest Gump, Philadelphia, all that stuff like that came out, and then
Hmm.
but I just really enjoyed this movie. Plus, I love the time period. I'm always a huge fan of like the Pan Am days and all that, and the old school days of flying and how classy it was. And I just love kind of like that era. I love the whole, cop and robber situation where you have Leo always on the run, and the one, it's kind of one of those reasons why I like The Fugitive. I love that chase aspect to it, where there's always that guy on the run, and the one guy who has to capture this dude, and will like give up his life and all that to do so. So I really really enjoyed this movie, so that's why it is number 7 for me.
Okay. We'll get to mine in just a second.
Cool.
But my number 6 is Jaws.
Whoa,
I'm
that low.
assuming yours is ranked higher. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll get to my thoughts on Jaws in a
Okay.
second. But then and then just to jump on it, my just jumping ahead one step. My number 5 is Catch Me If You Can.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Um, Came out when I was 15. It's it's around the same time as so it's 1 year after Artificial Intelligence, same year as Minority Report, I guess, which is wild. Spielberg's one of those guys who's got a lot of 2 great movies in 1
Yeah.
year, and then
Mhm.
sometimes 2 bad movies in 1 year, but
Right.
the man's very good at that. And even West Side Story was within 12 months of Fabelmans, which amazing. We That's well documented of this man's creative output, or this list is a testament to it. The fact
Oh,
that
yeah.
I'm putting Jaws at 6, which is one of the greatest movies of all time by all counts. And then to me, it was another Catch Me If You Can. I remember seeing it in theaters with my family at 15. Left a huge impression. Perfect age for that one. I'm guessing someone who's like, more of a boomer age, they're going to have a lot of the older movies on their list, which I'll get to in a second.
Sure.
But Catch Me If You Can, love it. And holiday classic coming up. It's on my list of holiday movies that are definitely holiday movies on
Good
Letterboxd.
point.
Um,
Yeah.
because it's got a couple of scenes that are very important around the holidays, even though it's definitely not technically a Christmas movie by most standards.
Right. Yeah. No, but good point. That's a good call. I forgot about that. That
Thank you.
that is definitely a movie that needs a rewatch because I haven't seen it in quite a bit. But yeah, good to hear. Nice.
It's the season to rewatch Catch Me If You Can.
For sure.
Amy Adams breakthrough.
Oh,
Okay.
that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 100%. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we're at 6 now, right? Okay, yeah. So
I just
number
went six
s
five because Jaws
okay.
Catch Me If You Can. So feel free to do the same.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm gonna be covering a movie you already covered too. But my
Ooh,
number 6
overlap.
is actually Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Um, I had a huge debate within myself as to where this movie was gonna rank. But again, it
Yep.
is definitely a movie I knew it was gonna be in my top 10 because the way I approached my love for this movie is because of the technical achievement and his directing. This is where we actually got to see Spielberg honing in on more of the technical aspects of movie making. You know, the spaceships, the way he played with lights. I loved the whole aspect. And we saw this with other directors trying to mimic it, not seeing the thing as it's happening and having
Mm-hmm.
that effect on you. When the boy opens the door and all he sees is the light and the mom is freaking the hell out, like that is always embedded in my mind for a very long time. So just the way he was able to achieve a lot of stuff without having to have to show stuff in front of you. And then of course eventually you get to see what the spectacle was and all that stuff like that. But as someone who growing up to eventually become a huge sci-fi lover, this was definitely a great entry point into that. Great performances by, Dreyfuss and whatever the case is. But the ending has always been one of those endings where I'm just like, all right, I feel like this is where we're getting the Spielberg who's getting a little soft with his like endings that during this time we don't see a lot of it, but this was definitely one of those more softer, oh look, everything's all peachy rosy and all that stuff like that, even though this could be terrifying for a lot of people or whatever the case is. But yeah, Close Encounters was definitely an impactful movie for me growing up, and that's why it's number 6. My number, well, excuse me. All this talking about Spielberg is getting me all dry in the mouth. But my number 5 is Saving Private Ryan. So, Saving Private Ryan, again, I think I was a perfect age when that movie came out. I think I like you, I was getting into a lot of war stuff around that time. And I think there was a lot of war stuff, like warlike content around that time too. I believe this is not very far from when Band of Brothers came out on HBO.
Tom
Um,
Hanks.
Tom Hanks,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think this is what got Tom Hanks into the whole fascination of war and how he kind of got into like, producing shows like, Band of Brothers and all that stuff like that. But yeah, the plethora of young actors in this movie. You have a young Vin Diesel, which I believe this was one of his very first movies.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh yeah.
that death scene alone was so traumatic and so
Mm-hmm.
like heart-wrenching and all that. Giovanni Ribisi. Every time these kids died, it was like, "Oh no." Um the poor Upham character who, could never like sack it up until, of course, obviously when the moment counted, right? But unfortunately, it was a little too late because he cost the life of one of his fellow team members and all that. But that whole journey and the whole scope of everything, I think to this day, a lot of people still talk about that the beach scene where it's been
Yep.
mimicked, it's been mirrored, it's been copied, it's been parodied, but that was phenomenal. The portrayal
Mm-hmm.
of that the particular moment in history, and it really set the tone of how gruesome the war was, and kind of like the huge task that these groups of people will have to eventually take on, just trying to find one person, right? Because basically, to tell them and bring them the story about their brothers dying already, and that he's the last one left, and it's time for him to go home because his family has suffered enough. I mean, oh, the all the feels and all that. So when we talk about like peak Spielberg storytelling, this is definitely one of
Mhm.
those for sure. Um, the reason why it doesn't
It's
rank
actually
higher.
yeah.
Go ahead.
On the storytelling, like, this movie's in a way referenced in Fabelmans, showing him working out a war scene with his Boy
Yes,
Scout troop and
yes.
filming it, which one of the most rewarding things about the Fabelmans is actually seeing a young Steven Spielberg stand in directing movies and figuring out how to get this young sisters to, it looks like it's real blood, but it's ketchup,
Right.
and we make the bullets look like they're flying because we kick the sand up. That stuff was so fun. Seeing the war scene in there it brought to mind exactly Saving Private Ryan, especially if you missed it at the time.
Mhm.
One, this is kind of like early days of America becoming super polarized, which now is just in the water. But this was like the beginning of that in a way of '98, where that is very much zeitgeist and new. And so a movie about people letting them, they're banding together for a
Mhm.
common mission and purpose. It was very timely at that point,
Yeah.
even in a pre 9/11 world when it comes out in '98. But also, I mean, modern standards, the war scenes are, yes, still, they hold up, I think.
Yeah.
It's not that wild in CGI land to see a very intense war movie where you're in it. Back then, I remember there was actually newspaper articles
Oh, yeah.
warning veterans to not see the movie if they have suffered PTSD,
Oh, yeah.
because it was so intense, and that, similar to in Fablemans when the young Sammys gets affected by the train crash scene in the movies, like, this
Yeah.
was a movie where people are properly freaking out in the theater,
Mhm.
and because it's so intense. So just if you're watching it later in life, keep that in mind that at the time, this is way more powerful than it even seems now.
Yeah, no, I know people who actually suffer from PTSD because of their service, and they refuse to watch this movie because
Mhm.
knowing
Yep.
that it's gonna punch you right in the face the minute the movie starts, because that's basically how the movie
Yep.
opens up.
Yep.
But yeah, no, yeah, it's fascinating how a movie like this, and we're talking about storytelling and everything, how we really get to see the the ability of Spielberg and his storytelling when it comes to film. And I was about to say before, the reason why this doesn't rank higher is because there's just other movies in his plethora of films that touched me in different ways and that have a lot of more meaning to me because of whatever the case is. But this is definitely one of those movies where if those other movies didn't exist, this would probably be one or two on the list for me, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah. For any director, this could be their
yeah,
number 1 all-time movie, and yep, for
yeah.
sure.
All right. So we're at number 4 now, right?
Mhm.
So what do you have there, Blakey?
So Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, oh, wait, hold on, wrong subtitle.
Oh, you're the one.
Of the Indiana Jones movies, I'm only doing 1 on this list. Another one could have made top 10, but not even really. So I'm going Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay.
Watched it about a million times as a young boy. Very important VHS in my household. We had
Sure.
to get multiple copies because it was a VHS. Um, Watched it a billion times. There was also a video game from the a PC game from the third Indiana Jones one that was also important to me. But when I realized like that's why it would crack the top 10, because I knew so much about it because of the PC game, I was like, "Oh, this one I know and love on the movie's own terms." And it's the first of the Indiana Jones movies, so it is the most important one in
Sure.
the way that. So my number 4, classic. So many classic moments from it that even if you've never seen it, you know the movie.
Oh yeah.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Nice. My number 4 is actually Jaws. So Jaws is number 4 on my list.
6 for
N-
me. Yep.
not much to talk about with this movie. If you know it, you know it. You've heard about it. The I think what made me appreciate this movie even more so is later on in life when I learned about the the trouble that he had filming this movie, especially with the breaking down of the robotics of the shark and how to like up until day of first filming they were having issues with this thing, and there was fears that the movie couldn't even be made anymore because they just couldn't get this damn robotic shark to work. Knowing all of that and knowing all the troubles that he went through and still producing a movie of like what we got is
Hmm.
phenomenal. Is phenomenal. And we talked about it before too. The performances he gets from his actors too. I mean, it put Rob Scheider, is it Scheider, on the map for a lot of people. Um, as far as his portrayal of the cop there. Um, I know for a fact that people in my life, when this movie came out, they refused to go to the beach for a while because it
Hmm.
freaked them the hell out. One of the greatest things I've ever done is I went to a water park, where they have like the the wave pool, and they had a showing of Jaws at night
Yes,
at a wave pool.
brilliant.
It
Yeah, we
it's
had that
it
at our
was
home growing up
yeah,
too. Yep.
it was one of the best experiences watching a movie for sure. But yeah, Jaws is cemented itself in movie history, and yeah, definitely is I had to acknowledge it on 4 on my list there. So number 3, we're
I,
getting to
I
the
s-
top 3. Oh, go ahead,
I
go
don't
ahead.
know. No, yeah, I said I would talk about Jaws when it came out. It's fucking Jaws. Nothing
Yeah,
else needs to be said. You said,
yeah,
yeah, it's fucking Jaws.
yeah.
Okay, three for me. This is where I'm throwing in Schindler's List. I had a hard time. I wanted to put it number one. It's essentially the beginning of Steven Spielberg's. It's at the beginning of Steven Spielberg trying to make serious movies.
Yeah.
Watching this Spielberg documentary on HBO also helped me understand. So, you know, the making of Jaws and how difficult that was on the technical standpoint, which is one of Spielberg's greatest gifts. In this one, it was like the soul searching,
Yeah.
the difficulty. Like he's literally like showing up to the set some days, being like, "I can't do this movie today. I don't have it in me."
Yeah.
The difficulty of the subject, and as someone who really likes art house cinema, and this is I'm going off the memory right now, but I believe this is his first Best Picture movie, and he wanted to be taken very seriously and had a history of not, and that's part of why he goes into the territory of movies like Color Purple and Amistad.
Hmm.
This is the most successful one, in my opinion, of any of those. And if you want to go into modern day where he wants to take on Trump fake news stuff, and he goes to the Post,
Yeah.
and then Bridge of Spies also, it's Bridge of Spies, not in my top 10. I gave you a hard time earlier. It's like my number 13, 15 ish. Um, Damn, of all those types of movies for Spielberg, Schindler's List, very high. Part of the reason I didn't give it number one is it's not the most indicative of the kind of movies that Spielberg makes. So
Hmm.
again, same we're saying with other movies, this could be the number one of any director, and it it's an all-time great Best Picture winner. The question to me isn't entirely which is the best movie, the most powerful, most important, most impactful movie. It's also like which one's the most representative and my best of the Spielberg movies. Whereas this one's a little bit more of an outlier, but totally might be the number one listed in his obituary at some point
Hmm.
when we get to there. Like, what's the most long lasting one as far as stories go? And powerful. It's also an outlier in other ways, just some of the techniques he used when he's making
Yeah.
it. It is very different from some of the other ones. So for that reason, I feel good about it. Number three, similar to you, I can't begrudge anyone, even if someone said, because I stood by this for a long time. I said I won't watch that one. I can't handle it.
Mm.
If someone says that or says it's number 10 because I can't watch it a second time, I it's one of those things. It's a deeply personal film for the viewer, and it definitely was
Sure.
for Spielberg too.
Yeah. No, and I remember when that movie came out, how so many people were affected by it emotionally. And that's one of the reasons why it got the praise it got. And I know talked about this multiple times already, but performances. I mean, Ray Fiennes, Liam Neeson, Ben Kingsley. I mean, we're talking about
Yeah.
some. If they were to ever be categorized as what were their probably best performances in their careers,
Oh,
this is
great
probably
point.
the one movie for all three of them. You know.
Liam Neeson fine for sure.
Yeah.
They both have a couple other ones that, and like Liam Neeson, it's obviously Taken. Just kidding. It's the one that most people know him for, of course. But
Yeah.
no, Kingsley, I think there's got to be a couple. But yeah, no, I mean you're not wrong. Like
Yeah.
top of the line obituary. on IMDb most known for. It's got to be up there for all three,
No,
if not number
definitely.
one.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. All right. So my number three is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So for me, I grew up really being a huge fan of the Indiana Jones franchise. When the third one came out with Sean Connery, his dad, we're getting more of the Indiana Jones lore, more than we've ever gotten in the last two movies. I immediately fell in love with this movie. I'm like, oh my God, this is more of what I've been hoping for, more of what I've been wanting. It's exciting, it's entertaining, it's funny, it's fun. It had everything that we loved about Indiana Jones. And just adding that extra dynamic of including his dad was just brilliant, right? And it's like, we've seen so many like buddy movies and all that. Like, and this is definitely a great buddy movie to add to that list. And yeah, it's just for me, it's just it, if we looked at the history of franchise movies and all that, you have your Star Warses, your Back to the Futures, your Ghostbusters, or whatever the case is. This is definitely one of those that it is a sequel and it's a third installment, but for a lot of people, this trumps the original, right? I don't say necessarily it trumps it for
Rare,
me. Yeah, and it's
sure.
extremely rare. But I had to mention it. Definitely, it is number three on my list of all-time Spielberg movies because it's just that good. So,
I don't want to disregard the George Lucas of the Indiana Jones of it all,
oh,
which I
of
didn't mention
course,
earlier. But we're
yeah.
talking about like him and Kubrick working, like
Hmm.
taking on the collab there, very important in film history.
That's
And then
one
if you're
thing.
thinking of their contemporaries and Godfather movies, like number three falls the hell off. This one
Yeah,
holds the candle for sure.
yeah. That's one thing I would love. We were talking about like people telling stories about their lives. If there were ever to be a Fabelmans 2, which we know there won't be, but I would
Yeah,
love to see a portrayal of film school and after film
hmm
school with Spielberg, Lucas, uh,
Scorsese,
Scorsese,
Coppola,
Coppola. I mean, the fact
yeah,
that they were all friends,
Palma.
hanging
Yep,
out, I mean, that is fantastic. I need to
yep.
know more about that period.
There's a whole chunk in the Spielberg documentary. It's not long enough. I could have. You're right. I need that
Yeah,
documentary at the very least. It's
yeah.
maybe 10, 15 minutes, and they have clips of them as young men talking together, and
Oh
they're telling
my
stories about
God.
talking shit. And this guy saying
Yeah.
he's going out with this girl, and then he's on his way to. My favorite one is Spielberg had the first car phone, and they would call a woman who thinks they're calling from their home. Hey, is it okay if we come over? We're on our way, and they would be outside of the person's home, and they're just like doing like boyish, pranky
Of
crap like
course.
that. And they're
Yeah.
just like, "Hey, surprise, we're here." That you're right. That needs to be a thing.
That
Okay,
that needs to be a thing. Yeah. All right. We're at number 2.
if you're one, two, three, or all Indiana Jones, I want to let you don't answer me. Don't even acknowledge it. But if that's the case, I'm walking off and never doing another one of these. Number two for me is Jurassic Park. Had a hard time not putting that at number one. I'm guessing yours
Ding,
has
ding,
to be
ding,
coming up, so feel
ding.
free to your
It's
two
number
too.
2 for me.
Oh, I'm so
Also,
worried it was going to be another Indiana Jones.
wow.
Okay,
No.
I really wanted to put this at number one. I had a real hard
I
time.
don't blame you.
I'll get to that in a second, but
Yeah.
damn, I was 7, couldn't see it at the time because I was just too young, but saw it right after on VHS and burned that one into the ground. Probably one of the movies I've seen more than almost any other movie.
Yeah.
I had a roommate at one point who was obsessed with it and would literally put it on every time they got sick, every other weekend, hungover, whatever. And so I've seen this movie maybe 60 times, and damn, it holds up. And it spins off one of the most successful of all of Spielberg's many franchise IP type movies. Um, Still making like $1 billion every few however many years. Can't say as much about the sequels to it, but the first
Mm,
one, damn. And we're talking about the things that the man is a pioneer of.
yeah.
Like maybe you could speak more to it, but my understanding is computer generated graphics. Like this is the breakthrough movie that changes everything. So
Yeah.
every single movie out now has the things that Spielberg is pioneering at the time. In Spielberg documentary, they're talking about like, oh, hey, yeah, this guy has this technology. You might want to look at it. People aren't really using it. You might want to look at it. And so I'm not saying it's the first CGI movie with any CGI at all. Damn, the backstory on this one, which is another thing I watched as a kid, which maybe at some point it was like DVD and the behind the scenes. Watched the
Hmm.
behind the scenes a million times too.
Yeah.
Very powerful, important. I don't need to say more. It's Jurassic Park. It's a T Rex of a movie.
I mean, again, growing up loving dinosaurs, any boy or girl who loves dinosaurs, this was their
Yo,
freaking movie to finally
yep.
like encapsulate all of that, your childhood memories, again, right age, right time. This is the movie that everyone was waiting for, and it spoke to all of that, And I remember after watching this movie, I started like revisiting my love of dinosaurs where I started reading encyclopedias about dinosaurs all over again. You know, the character of Alan Grant was actually based off of a real dinosaur expert. I started reading his books and reading his articles and all that. Um, it was just one of those crazy phenomenons that happened at that time. You talked about how you had a VHS tape of Raiders and how you would constantly watch that. For me, that was Jurassic Park. I had a VHS tape of that, and at least maybe once a week, sometimes I would pop that
hmm
in and I would just watch it,
hmm
because it's just that good. It's
hmm
just that entertaining. What you were talking about as far as technical achievement, yeah, not only was this one of the first movies that really utilized CG to its full extent at the time, but he still was able to blend in practical effects too. There was still a lot of puppetry. There was still a lot of robotics and animatronics used.
hmm
So the fact that he was able to blend the two very well, I mean, it felt like those dinosaurs were real, and
hmm
it was, and not only that, I think a lot of people also often forget this was a pretty horrific movie too. So this is,
hmm
I know I made a joke before about, how Spielberg doesn't really do genre bending and all that, but I would say maybe this is one of the things you would consider kind of blending genres of blockbuster, horror,
hmm
thriller,
hmm
adventure, you know? Because there was a lot of scenes where it was very, yeah, the raptors every time they were hunting or chasing the kids down or whatever the case is, that was some frightening stuff, the kitchen
Yeah.
scene, and all that. I mean, there we could talk about this movie for forever, but it was just
hmm
definitely one of those movies that, really, and it still stands the test of time. Like I could still watch this movie and be thoroughly entertained as much as I was entertained when I first saw it.
You could
Like
say it's
some of,
preserved in amber, which is just a thing people say about things because
hey,
of the movie Jurassic Park. It's so ubiquitous. Also, next
absolutely.
year we're looking at a 30-year anniversary, so maybe we do actually do a Jurassic Park
There you
episode.
go. That would be actually a lot of fun. Maybe do a rewatch. There's
I'd
the
love that.
possibilities are endless. But yeah, 30 years.
hmm
Oh my God. Can you believe it was
hmm
that long ago? I saw this in the theater. I had a chance to see this in the theater, and it was like full pack theater opening weekend. And wow, what a time to be at a theater for this type of movie to watch. But yeah, great movie. And I think for a lot of people, this would be their number one Spielberg movie of
Oh
all
yeah,
time.
easy to imagine that. And all the things we talked about Spielberg being great at. One thing we didn't mention enough, I don't think, is casting. Which
Yeah.
casting kids and working with child actors, which a lot of these movies very important and difficult. But also Laura Dern, love of my life. First time I
Oh
ever
yeah,
saw
of
her in Late
course.
Eyes.
Yes. Yes.
Very important movie to me in many ways. But it
I
has a special place in my heart.
I totally understand because I remember after seeing this, I think I quickly watched Rambling Rose. And if you talk about
No
Laura
idea the
Dern,
reference. I don't know if I.
oh, okay,
Okay.
look it up. Look it up.
Okay.
If you're a Laura Dern fan, then for sure that's a movie you have to watch. And plus
Okay.
it also gave us one of the best memes ever in Sexy Goldblum with his shirt wide open.
Yes.
It's like, it gave us a
Yes.
meme before memes were even a thing back then. And it
Oh,
became one of
and
the best memes ever.
two memes actually, because the one of the I'm not gonna be able to do it off memory, but woman,
Oh
you
yes.
know what I'm talking about,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes. The,
which is
the
one of the most
speech.
shared. hmm
Yeah. What
Um,
is it? God creates man, man creates dinosaur, or creates whatever. woman inherits the earth. Like that's
Yes.
basically how it
Yes.
ends. But
Dinosaur
yes,
kills man, woman. Yes.
yes.
Oh, I could go on. We got to save it for the 30-year memorial
um,
episode.
no, for sure.
Put in the
Oh,
calendar.
but we are at our number one. So I am so curious, Blake. What is your number one Spielberg movie of all
Okay.
time?
This is not going to be on anyone's list, so I just want to make that very clear. I have to preface this two ways. That and this one, as far as TV shows go, it's one of the most important TV shows. Which obviously I know this is this is a Spielberg ranking, but Columbo. Spielberg directed the first episode of Columbo,
Wow.
and this is by far and away the most important and impactful TV show. Is that Are we
Wow.
allowed to do pilots, or
We
are
are
you?
now.
Is it on your
If
list?
it, well, I no, but hey.
Oh shit. Okay, fine. I'll go with Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh,
That was
that's your
Oliver
number
Ooze.
one.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. I'm not gonna apologize. I will say
No need
it's
to.
not the one I've seen the most. Don't know if it's the most important or powerful. I do know that with my sensibility of movies and what I love about them, it's number one.
Mhm.
There's a thing where it's kind of one of the most. It encapsulates the most Spielberg things in a movie in ways with like the father going away, the father being obsessed with something else, looking in the skies, the escape, the
The
magic
dream.
cinematic
Yeah.
aspects. Yes, and then also in the Spielberg documentary, one thing that kind of where I felt like, okay, I'm comfortable with this was when he was talking about. Well, I knew that most logically, the way we would communicate with aliens would be through mathematics and language. But I wanted to do it. I knew that was the right answer, but then at some point we thought about music, and I knew that was a more beautiful way to do it. And
Yeah.
when they communicate through music, like to me, one of the most impactful scenes of all movies all time, and the lights. You already talked about it. I don't need to
Mhm.
go on. I saw that one very recently, actually. It was a COVID lockdown movie
Mhm.
because I was going through things I'd missed over time. Seeing it
Oh,
later
so
helped
you
a
saw
lot
it.
too.
So this was your first time seeing it recently?
I was born 10 years after this movie came out, and it's one of those
Oh,
that
I
just
know.
never hit the radar. Um,
Wow. I envy
and
you.
so,
That's amazing.
yeah, it was a very special. And I think it's another one of those, just like we're talking about when I was a boy seeing Spielberg, and now as a man, Close Encounters, seeing at this age was, I think, for whatever reason at that time in my life, just the right point.
Mhm.
It's not the only right answer for number one, but it is definitely my answer for to me the best, most Spielberg movie of all time. Stand by it. What
if
number was it for you?
for me it was number 6.
Wrong. Okay, moving
Oh,
on.
well, that's fine. I
We
mean,
don't even
we
have to
we
hear the
all
rest of
we
yours.
all have our
We already know it's
opinions.
Ready Player
We all
One.
have our opinions.
Go ahead, say Ready Player
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Let me build up to it at
One.
least. Um no, but what I was going to say is like if we were to go back in time before Jurassic Park came out and you asked people what their top Spielberg movies were, I think there was a huge debate between Close Encounters and Jaws at one point.
Which come out within 2 years of each other, I
Yeah,
think,
which
which
is
is wild.
insane. Which is insane. But again,
I love
it
this man's
it shows
career.
you the pedigree of this director. It's just
Hmm.
it's nuts.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, I love that that's your number one. Again, I am so envious that you saw it recently for the first time. I would
Hmm.
have loved to seen your reaction during that
Hmm.
moment because that is a
Hmm.
special movie. And again, we talked about it a lot with when Nope came out. The fact that, Jordan like took a lot of aspects from Close Encounters and kind of incorporated it into that movie. You could tell the Spielberg influence for sure. Um,
Oh yeah.
you
Oh
know,
my goodness.
yeah.
It
All right.
holds up for sure.
Yeah, it
For
does.
sure.
I did see it recently again. I rewatched it because I don't know if it still is, but it's for free on YouTube, and it just popped up one day. I was just like, oh my god, this is for free on YouTube. So I just had it play, and I'm just like,
Nice.
oh, love it. I love it. And talking about back in the day, growing up watching TV, that was another movie of his that would always be on network television. once a year at least, because I remember
Mhm.
seeing the commercials for it. But going to my number one Spielberg movie of all time, it is the BFG. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's not the BFG. Could you imagine if I just said that
Oh,
it's the
mhm.
Adventures
I
of
did well,
Tintin?
yeah,
No,
okay, okay.
no. For reals, my number one is Raiders of the Lost Ark. Again, I
I
kind of preface
Well,
it.
I thought it was Ready Player One, thank God, okay.
No,
I
no.
was actually very close, I
I,
thought.
I I prefaced it earlier when I said that Indiana Jones is one of my favorite franchises of all time. Raiders, it being the original, it holds as my number one movie of Spielberg. Because again, I think right age, right time. You know, I saw this movie for the first time on VHS, but I was a boy who was a fan of adventure. And, I actually grew up watching a lot of like those old serials on TV because my dad was a huge fan of those growing up when I was growing up. So I watched a lot of those black and white serials, you're kind of like, tomb raiding adventures or safari adventures and all that. And this was like a modernized version that I've never seen before. I love the character of Indiana Jones. I love the comedy in it. I love the action in it. The ending was like crazy, nuts, and horrific. Especially you have the people's faces melting and all that stuff like that.
Mm, mm,
Um, but the action alone was just so well done. And plus, for me, it was a movie that I watched after Star Wars. So I
mm,
saw Han Solo in another
yep.
role, and I was just like, "What? He could be Han Solo and Indiana Jones?" I'm like, and that's where my Harrison Ford obsession came from. So it was just, yeah, great movie. A lot of you know it already, so there's really not much to talk about, but it really brought to screen that kind of serialized thing that we used to see on TV and made it a little bit more grand, gave us a lot of adventure. I love that it took place in a different time, like back then, because it gave it that old-timey feel and everything. Um Alfred Molina, that we didn't know who he was back then, but we sure know who he is now.
Wow.
Yeah, you
Huh,
remember he was like,
I missed
"Throw
that, yeah?
throw me the rope. I throw you the idol."
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh, okay.
Yeah.
God, I need to
So
I that might be the one I rewatch tonight since it's been a minute.
oh, that would be a nice one. Yeah. Funny enough, speaking of Indiana Jones, I know we've been dogging on Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I don't think I think I mentioned this off air to you, but I was telling Blake that I watched it again last night because we were prepping for this episode. I was in a Spielberg mood. I was in an Indiana Jones mood, and I decided to pop it in because I haven't seen it since probably it came out in theaters. Um, Knowing and walking into it, knowing how bad it is, I think I was able to actually stomach it. And I took it for what it was, where it was just like a lower grade Indiana Jones movie. Um, I, the fact that,
That's says a lot that
yeah,
your phrasing was, "I was able to stomach it."
yeah,
Okay,
because I
okay.
remember leaving the theater when I saw it angry. I was really
Yeah.
angry. I was like, what was that? That was not an Indiana Jones movie. I think they really played heavily too much on his being, aging and getting older. They can't kind of trolled us and teased us that maybe this mutt guy was gonna take over, but not really, not yet. And I was just like, get out of here with that nonsense, right? I do love Kate Blanchett, and I just needed to
Mm,
see a Kate Blanchett movie. This is definitely
mhm.
not one of her better ones, but hey, she's in it, so it made it better for me. But yeah, it was very, very interesting. But yeah, Raiders was just, and growing up in New York at that time, in the 80s, I'm sure a lot of you out there who are my age range or who remember that time will always remember the WPIX commercial of Raiders of the Lost Ark
Mm, 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 mm.
that had lyrics to the theme song by John Williams. Again, John Williams, who's worked. If it wasn't for Spielberg, I don't think John Williams would have had a career because he has been the soundtrack, person for Spielberg movies ever since Spielberg came out. But if you grew up in the East Coast or in New York, you remember that the WPIX commercial, they had the Indiana Jones theme song, and that had me excited every time that come out. That means, yes, I get to see Indiana Jones again for the umpteenth time or whatever the case is. But yeah, no, Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, my number one Spielberg movie.
But great, solid choice. I think before, because I know we're about to
Yeah.
wrap, but before we move on, just like in retrospect,
Hmm.
obviously it's well known, well documented. It's bonkers how many amazing and powerful movies this dude has.
Sure.
But where when I'm going through the list, one of the things that blew my mind, which we kind of mentioned, was the twofers, where he has two movies in 1 year or
Yeah.
right back to back with each other. So the and there's a couple that like it doesn't work quite as well. Um, but one of the ones that blew so like Adventures of Tintin and Warhorse, I think is one of the ones. Yeah, same year, not quite as successful. War of the Worlds in Munich, getting there. One of the he's got some earlier on, but one of the ones that stood out that are he has 2 years where there are two movies in both of our lists. In '02, we mentioned earlier, Minority Report and Catch Me If You Can are in the same year. Right before that, it was AI, artificial intelligence, the year before, and the year after, just
Hmm.
after, the next movie was Terminal.
Yeah.
In '97, it's Amistad and Lost World Jurassic Park. But to me, one of the greatest achievements of all time. In '93, it's Jurassic Park and Schindler's List,
Isn't that
which are
nuts?
both like my two and three, which
Right.
are one of the greatest blockbuster movies of all time and one of the greatest Best Picture winners of all time in the
Yeah.
same year. And it's one of the reasons why when someone says, "Oh, the movie The Fabelmans," why is this person tooting their own horn? Like, I are you kidding me? Thank you for making this movie to help me better understand how the hell you got here. Because
Yeah.
wow, what a career!
I mean, and again, we only covered the movies he directed. There's a lot of movies that he
Yeah,
was writer,
yep,
producer, and that just elongates this list of things that he was involved in.
oh
But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, there was just so many movies, and this is just our personal top 10 too. There are a lot of other movies on here that he's made that would probably be in other people's top 10. I know for a fact if you grew up in the 90s, Hook was a favorite of yours, you know,
yes, a childhood favorite for me. Watched a
right?
million times. Couldn't put on the list because of that, but yeah, that's
Right.
a fine. There's about 20 more of these that no one that you can't be mad at putting them on there.
Yeah.
It's not like he's got 10 great ones and 24 busts. Not at all.
No.
He's got about five
No.
busts. Everything else is eligible
Yeah.
for sure.
And it's bust because maybe it wasn't our cup of tea. Like I would say like
Sure.
Warhorse wasn't for me. The BFG wasn't for me. But it could be for other people, and all that. So
Let us know
um
in the comments if your favorite Spielberg movie is Warhorse, and I would love to see how people respond. But seriously though, I am curious what people what
yeah.
the what we missed. One of the questions I have, which you've already gave me mine, is like, what's the Spielberg movie you now want to go watch tonight or rewatch tonight? What are the movies that we missed that should have absolutely? How can you not put that in your top 10? And obviously, ET would be most people's answer for us. But
I
man, that
think
was
you're right.
fun.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Oh well.
Sorry.
Sorry. Womp womp womp. But yeah, let us know how wrong we were for not having ET on our top 10. But no, seriously, let us know what your top Spielberg movies are. Again, his list is phenomenally long. So, and everyone's list is going to be different, but let us know. We would love to have a conversation. Let us know what movie, or you could also let us know which Spielberg movie you hated the most. Like which
Mm.
one of his movies where you're like, why did he do this? I think for most people, it might be Ready Player One. I think a lot of people were saying that that was one of their.
Actually, I'm sorry. I love that movie.
I did
I know I was
too.
joking on it earlier.
Yeah.
Solid movie. A lot of
Yeah.
haters in this world. If you're
Well,
one of them, please let us know in the comments.
yeah. Well, whatever the case is. But yeah. So what Spielberg movie you think you're gonna watch? Are you gonna go back and watch Raiders tonight?
That's the one that's hitting right now,
Yeah.
and also watching the Spielberg documentary. It does a pretty good job of going into most of his movies, and it's kind of like after the Oscars they do the little sampler
Yeah.
thing, and you go, "Oh, that movie." But as Mitzi Fabelman says, movies are dreams that you never forget. So I'm excited to remember some of these again.
There you
It
go.
was fun.
And what a perfect way to end the episode there. But yes, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Movie Time, clocking in about 2 hours. But hey, we had a lot of stuff to catch up on. So it is what it is. If
Missed you.
there's a lot of, we have chapters. You could skip around if you wanted to and all that. I'll clip some of this stuff out because I think we talked about a lot of great stuff. But before we leave for this episode, Blake, it's been a long time. Why don't you remind
Mm,
people where they could find you online?
right here on the Movie Time channel weekly. I'm excited for our next one. I don't think we're ready to say what it is yet, but the next one I'm hyped for. Definitely hit the subscribe button if you like
Definitely.
this at all.
Yeah.
On the on letterboxd.com, you will find my account, Blake Wolf SSN, where I recently added a list called 2022 movies where mothers drive their children into natural disasters, which in the movie Blonde, it was a fire. And in this one, it was a tornado, which as an Oklahoman terrified the living hell out of me. Mitzi Fabelman, so glad you finally got therapy. Thank you for giving us Steven Spielberg. Definitely, I've got a few more lists like that I love to put on there. That's where you can find me on the Letterboxd app. And all my movie opinions, where I gave this movie 4.5 stars, still trying to decide.
Nice, very nice. Yes, Blake has recently shared with me some of his newer lists on Letterbox, and I'm telling you, if you're not following him on Letterbox, you got to do it because he comes up with some of the more unique movie lists, and it kind of makes you think too, like the whole Christmas thing and Catch Me If You Can, and then whatever the case is. Like I would have not have really thought about that until he reminded me.
Oh,
So
The Fablemans. I've now got about 80 on that list of Christmas movies that mention or reference in some weird way
or
Christmas that are
holiday.
not.
Oh my God, you're
Fablemans,
very
definitely,
right.
yeah. They're
You're
going, why don't
absolutely
we have
correct.
lights? And they said, because we don't celebrate Christmas. Boom. It says the word Christmas, it's going on the list. There you
That
go.
is one thing I'm actually glad you said that because I also do like the fact that did not shy away from the Jewish culture in this movie, which I'm sure it was a huge importance of him growing up, and that also added to the struggle and challenge of him growing up as well. So I'm actually glad we didn't talk enough about that, but I
Yeah.
love that how this movie addressed that.
In the Spielberg doc, especially when they talk about Schindler's List, he talks about that question and shame, childhood bullying, etc.
Yeah,
I'm very glad he's making this movie at a point in his life where he fully takes that on and incorporates that in the story, especially in today's world where I'm very glad that was, yeah,
yeah.
beautiful, beautiful movie, beautiful family.
Hmm.
Great, great.
There you go.
Yeah.
But as for me, all the handles, you could see it on there on the screen, Loki Geek. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram. Does anyone use Facebook anymore? I don't know, but I'm there. Also now with all this debate about people leaving Twitter and everything like that, you could find me on Mastodon if you know what that is. It's another decentralized social networking platform or whatever the case is. But yeah, not a lot of people on there. But hey, there are some people on there. Neil Gaiman is on there. So I was like, hey, I'll follow him. But yeah, you can follow me there. But yeah, otherwise, the Loki Geek channel here on YouTube. Videos are uploaded every week. You can find this episode and many others. If you haven't done so already, it doesn't take you that long, just a quick couple of seconds, and it doesn't cost you a thing. Hit that like, subscribe, notification bell to get notified every time a video is uploaded. Audio listeners, thank you so much for listening. If you want an audio version of this episode, type out Low-Key Geek on your podcast platform of choice where you can find this episode and many others for your listening pleasure. I've been Renee. That's been Blake. Thank you so much for watching. Stay cool, stay classy, stay sane, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace out, y'all.